professor of pharmacy at Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151, Not Christmas Eve. Damn. What the hell are you doing? Seeing that the Dementors refuse to disperse, Black cursed in a low voice. Snape, you'd better use your full strength. Black shouted, don't even think about being lazy. Among the four people, only Snape had a ball of silver in front of him, and they all saw it. The Patronus curse in the form of a non-corporeal Patronus has limited deterrence against Dementors, which requires the other three of them to put in more effort to make up for Snape's shortcomings. Harry swallowed nervously. He also heard Blake's call. He looked up at Alexis, who was frowning in thought, and his eyes became determined. He wrenched himself from Alexis' arm and stood next to Blake, wand held high. Calling God. A few wisps of bright white emerged from the tip of the wand, then turned into dots of starlight and disappeared. Calling God. Harry was sweating nervously. He waved his wand again and shouted loudly. This time there wasn't even a silvery white spot of light. Good boy, go back. We can still hold on. Blake looked down at Harry, who was sweating profusely, felt extremely distressed, and shouted quickly. Harry shook his head and continued waving his wand. This time, he carefully recalled what Snape taught him, recalled the feeling in that strange room, in front of that strange mirror, recalled the feeling of successfully using the Patronus charm, and then repeated them one by one. Come out. Calling God. Harry yelled through gritted teeth. Wisps of silver white light points flew out from the tip of his staff, and the light points gathered together in the sky to form a dreamlike nebula. The nebula quickly grew, filling the previous vacancy and resisting the Dementors. In just a moment, waves of weakness came over his body, and the huge consumption of the God-calling guard began to overwhelm Harry. Go back quickly. Blake saw Harry's difficulty and shouted back to Alexis. Damn it, Alexis. Think of something. Alexis ignored him. He was like a sculpture, standing still with his head raised. Maybe if you were close enough, you could see that Alexis was shaking slightly. This scene was exactly the same as the vision he saw in the Mirror of Erised in the Room of Requirement that night. Seeing a complete vision in the Mirror of Erised is rare, but not impossible. But like Alexis, that's really the only case. The visions he saw in the Mirror of Erised were different every time. Some were in war, some were in peace, some were singing with birds, and some were eerie. But in the past, these visions were just illusions. Like this time, this is the first time that it happened in reality exactly as in the fantasy. Snape on the other side hesitated for a moment and suddenly withdrew his wand. The moment the wand was retracted, the area he was responsible for appeared missing, and a large number of Dementors came towards him. In just a moment, with everyone looking at him in confusion, Snape waved his wand again, and a lithe deer flew out and blocked the gap again with deft steps. Lupin and Black looked at the deer and opened their mouths in surprise. The shock the deer gave them was strong enough that they almost forgot to maintain the Patronus charm. Black was about to say something, but Snape stifled him back with a sharp glare. Even for a person with Black's reckless character, he could see that something was wrong with Snape at this time. There are no patron saints in the form of deer. They know a couple whose guardian spirits are a doe and a stag respectively. As it happened, Snape also knew the couple. They are Lily Potter and James Potter. Mrs. Potter and Mr. Potter's Patronus charms matched so well that they once teased them. But after seeing Snape's Patronus charm, they didn't know what to say. Snape. Black felt that he should say something at this time, but after calling Snape's name, he didn't know what to say. Fortunately, he turned his attention back to Harry in time, from the moment he saw Harry, except for when Snape summoned the deer, which made him briefly look away from Harry. He had been paying attention to Harry. Okay, you can go back first, Blake said. Anyone could see that Harry was struggling. He was now pale and trembling. 4 people, 4 patron saints. This was their plan in advance. 4 people were enough to keep the Dementors out. It felt difficult before, because some people were working hard, but were not doing their best. Alexis, whatever you're thinking, you'd better hurry up. We can't stay passive like this forever. Blake shouted back to Alexis. In Alexis' pupils, the 4 patron saints jumping back and forth in the sky came to life, but soon, a person would appear among them, right next to where he was standing, where Harry had stood, and then, all the prisoners in the prison ran out. Then Harry would fall, followed by Lupin. Snape was swinging the blade around like crazy, and Sirius Black started to go crazy, desperately attacking the wizard who killed Lupin, leaving Christy struggling to support himself. Finally, Christy fell, Snape also fell, and Black and him were surrounded by hundreds of wizards. He had to use the fire escape bodyguard and the fire spell to turn the entire Azkaban into a sea of fire. Flames swept through the entire Azkaban, and he fell from the air into the scalding water, and sank to the bottom of the sea. The smell of burnt fish mixed with the smell of sea fish. Alexis woke up with a start. There was a snapping sound around him. Alexis whipped out her wand, and took half a step back. Shen Feng Wuang was how cast a spell, and cut straight into his side. There, a handsome man's neck was cut in half, and blood spurted out and splashed all over his face. Alexis watched as the man clutched his throat, his eyes widened in disbelief, and slowly fell down. He pulled Harry up, and there was another snapping sound all around. "Go back to jail," he shouted, and the next moment, the snapping sound became violent, and he and Harry disappeared. In the reception room, Alexis and Harry's figures reappeared. In the prison area separated by a wall, the originally quiet prisoners became noisy. "Harry, follow me." Alexis leaned over to explain, flicking back the wand in his hand. Bones in pieces, a magic spell flew out, and an unkempt prisoner was hit, and his body flew backwards. The wand in Alexis' hand passed through the air, and the iron door connecting the reception room to the prison area was closed. Another spell was cast, and the iron door was reinforced layer by layer. The iron door, that was originally shaken by the prisoners behind it, immediately became stable. "Stay with them, Harry." Alexis stood up, and looked at the people who had retreated into the reception room. "Christy, Lupin, take care of Harry. Snape, go with Black and find the person who doesn't belong here. The time turner is all on him." With that, Alexis rushed out of the reception room. Chapter 152, Felix Gas Stove. "Hey." Alexis Christie chased after him, and wanted to say something else. The iron door had been closed by Alexis, and then there was a banging sound, and the iron door was reinforced by Alexis. Alexis fixed the iron door and turned around. At this time, the outside was densely packed with Dementors, and all the Dementors in Azkaban were rushing towards him. Alexis squeezed the wand, put it back into his pocket, and took out an Elder Wand from his arms. This wand looked very old, and the wand was even slightly bent. The moment he held the Elder Wand, scenes from the past flashed through Alexis's mind. The salty sea breeze, the golden pumpkin patch, the windmill, the ugly toys, the clumsy stone castle. Calling God. Alexis opened her eyes and shouted loudly. Wisps of silver white starlight emerged from the tip of the staff. They circled and rose halfway up to meet the Dementors. Unlike other people's, these starlights collapse at the touch of a button, and just like their appearance, they look illusory. Damn it. Alexis cursed and gave up hope. He raised his head, and looked at the central tower of Azkaban. The wand in his hand was slowly waving as if unconsciously, and there was a snapping sound all around. The next moment, just as the Dementors swarmed up, he disappeared and appeared at the top of the tower. The Dementors jumped away, lingered at the door for a moment, then all turned and rushed toward the tower. Alexis climbed to the top, looked around, and after silently calculating in his mind, he raised the Elder Wand again. Fire escape, protection. The faint blue flame turned into a fire dragon, flew out from the tip of the wand, swirled in the air, and danced wildly. The fire dragon spread quickly, and enveloped the tower at his feet. After the fire dragons merged from both ends, blue flames suddenly rose up. Alexis raised her wand high, and looked through the flames into the distance. Above the sea, in the pitch black night, a large black dot was flying towards this direction. The black spot was quickly obscured by the Dementors, and Alexis' field of vision was completely occupied by the Dementors. The Dementors densely surrounded Alexis. The feeling was like reaching out of an ice cellar. Alexis felt that her limbs had been frozen, and the blood in her veins had stopped flowing. A Dementor approached Alexis, almost face to face with him. Dementors have no facial features, they are just a mass of black smoke. The Dementor stretched out its smoke-formed claw and pressed it against Alexis's left cheek. Wisps of silvery white light flashed from Alexis's facial features. The Dementor made a sucking gesture, but those silver bands of light only flickered once and then disappeared. The Dementor lowered its claws and retreated back into the group of its companions. They still did not let go of Alexis, but kept spinning and flying around Alexis, like a group of hunting lions, looking for a place to bite. Finally, the Dementors decided, and its body paused in the air for a moment, before rushing towards Alexis. Whoosh, it seemed to be the sound of wind, perhaps mixed with sharp and high-pitched screams, but these were only for a moment, and then the whole world fell silent. Alexis only felt that her body had become stiff. Strangely, the cold feeling disappeared, and the uncomfortable sound, like fingernails scratching the glass, also disappeared. The fire escape guard disappeared, and the surroundings were dark. He wanted to see his wand. Had he interrupted the spell? Valley. The wand is also missing. His arms, hands, torso, legs, his entire body seemed to be missing. In the prison area, Lupin and Christie sandwiched Harry on the left and right. There were a dozen fish that slipped through the net outside them, and the two of them took care of them in a few seconds. Fire escape bodyguard, Christie exclaimed when she saw the faint blue flames outside through the gap. Ever since Grindelwald disappeared, fire escape has almost become Alexis's signature spell. There are not many people in the world who can use fire escape to protect themselves. Those who can use it so vividly and are still active outside are the only ones who can use it so vividly. There was only one Alexis. The two looked at the open iron door, the one leading to the prison area. Although Harry didn't know what was happening, he could feel that both Christie and Lupin were worried. At this time, he regretted a little, regretting that he had followed him willfully. If he wasn't here, maybe Christie and Lupin would have followed Snape and Black to find someone. Maybe they would have found the person Alexis mentioned. Maybe they have already begun to retreat. Without him, Alexis wouldn't have to face such a large group of Dementors alone, right? In the prison area, Snape and Black have already passed the gate leading to the depths. Their cooperation is full of loopholes. Fortunately, they are strong. After long-term imprisonment, the prisoners here have almost become Alzheimer's. So far, they can cope with it. So far, the two of them still don't understand why their previous plan was to guard Azkaban against possible Death Eater invasion, but now it has become a search for someone. But time is running out, and they choose to believe Alexis's judgment. They also saw the fire escape guard outside. Alexis doesn't know the Patronus charm. Harry doesn't know this, but they know it. They don't yet know what Alexis' situation will be when facing the Dementors alone, but they know that their time is not many. This way. Black stopped arguing with Snape. He pointed to the left, casually shot a prisoner who was moving slowly and looked like a zombie to death, and took the lead to run over. Snape struck back with a sharp strike, slit the throat of the prisoner behind him who was trying to sneak up on him, and followed closely behind. The two people ran quickly along the dark and narrow corridor. Along the way, they could see that the doors of the cells that should have been closed had been opened. Some of them were empty, and some prisoners were trembling and crawling out. Black led Snape around a corner again, and a scream was heard, causing the two of them to stop. A crazy woman wearing a black cloth outfit with hair as curvy as instant noodles was smiling exaggeratedly, walking around a blurry black shadow. This woman has fair skin, a slender figure, and her beautiful appearance is completely ruined by a crazy and twisted expression, which makes people shudder. Snape and Black stopped. As if hearing the movement behind her, the woman turned around. She lowered her head slightly, her eyes turned around the two of them, and then stared at Snape. "Look. Who's here? Isn't this dear Severus? Why are you hanging out with my stupid brother? Come here, Severus." Snape tightened his grip on his wand and spoke the woman's name syllable by syllable through gritted teeth. Bellatrix. Chapter 153. Bellatrix. Don't talk nonsense to her. Let's talk about old things later. Sirius Black was not here to reminisce about the past. He shouted loudly, flicked the wand in his hand, and cast a spell directly on Bellatrix's neck. At the same time, Snape also took action. He held the wand with 4 fingers, raised his arm, stared at Bella gloomily, and flicked it fiercely. Bella laughed loudly, twisting her waist like a water snake, to avoid Black's crushing curse. A few strands of hair on her side were cut off by Snape's divine blade and fell to the ground. Mixed with sticky blood slowly flowed towards Snape and the two. The crushing spell hit the iron railings on the side, making a violent roar and splashing a few sparks. The iron door was overwhelmed and fell to the ground with a creak boom. Bella laughed like a psycho, bent down to avoid Black's attack again, waved her wand, and cast a spell. To neutralize Snape's attack point, she turned around and shouted to the people behind her, Dolohov, Rookwood, Mulciber, Gargson, Old Noel, go and join Notrabaston Ridolphus, Old Crab, Avery, stay with dear Souffle, say hi. Dolohov and the others seemed to be dissatisfied with Bella's command, but they didn't say anything more. They just snorted and hurried across the battlefield where Bella and the others came, towards the direction where Snape and the two came. And go. Old Crab and Avery responded and rushed towards Snape together. Snape was forced to separate from Black and deal with Old Crab and Avery alone. My dear brother, well, now, there are only 2 of us left here. Facing Sirius Black alone, Bella's pressure was greatly reduced. She no longer blindly defended and evaded, and even occasionally fought back. Outside Azkaban, there are small boats floating on the blue sea. Rufus stood at the bow of the ship, with a dense crowd of people standing behind him. Action. Rufus saw the blue flames burning in Azkaban in the distance and immediately shouted. The aura behind him took out his wand and pointed it straight at the sky. Transparent spells rose into the sky and connected with each other to form a large protective shield, blocking enemies flying from the coast. Our mission is to them. Leave the matters inside to Alexis. Rufus gave a simple explanation, took the lead, drew his wand, and rushed towards the enemy. Behind him, Moody, Flitwick, Emmeline Vance, Epheus and other members of the Order of the Phoenix, as well as auras from the Ministry of Magic, rushed forward. The rooftop of Azkaban Tower. The darkness faded, and Alexis regained her senses. A biting cold feeling hit him from all around. He wanted to move, but found that he seemed to be under a petrification spell, and his whole body was stiff. A gust of sea breeze blew by, and Alexis was shaken. Another Dementor rushed over. Alexis leaned back, and fell straight to the ground. His eyes widened, and he tried desperately to move his arms, but found that he couldn't move at all. The wind roared past my ears, and the ground got closer and closer. Alexis gave up struggling, and stared at the ground with wide eyes. Silent spellcasting plus wandless spellcasting. His fall began to slow. Behind him, a large group of Dementors gathered into a dark cloud, and chased after him. Thump. Alexis landed safely. He used the silent spell again, and the rigidity of his body was gradually released. He finally regained consciousness. Calling God, guard. Alexis faced the Dementor, waved her Elder Wand, and shouted. A cloud of silver white light gauze spurted out from the tip of the staff, and the light gauze rapidly expanded to form a barrier, blocking Alexis. Alexis put down her arms, put her hands on her knees, bent over and gasped for air. The incorporeal Patronus charm brought him a brief respite. Lupin. Inform Dumbledore that their target is Harry in the Ministry of Magic. Alexis cast an amplifying spell on herself, and the sound was quickly amplified and echoed throughout Azkaban. The next moment, the barrier was breached, and swarms of Dementors rushed towards us. Shut up, guard. The Patronus charm failed again, and Alexis didn't care to delve into this damn curse that sometimes didn't work, and led the Dementors to run towards the sea. Deep in Azkaban, Bella, who was wrestling with Blake, paused slightly. Lupin. Inform Dumbledore that their target is Harry in the Ministry of Magic. The amplification spell is not a flying pigeon delivering a message, nor is it a phone call. It cannot achieve point-to-point independent communication. Alexis's shout was heard by everyone in Azkaban. Of course Bella could hear it too. Arrogant Alexis is going to suffer a lot. Bella laughed and attacked Blake even more crazily. The goal of her, Old Crab, and Avery was not to kill Snape and Black. Their goal was to separate the group of 4 and hold back Snape and Black. As for Christy and Lupin, Dolohov and the others will naturally deal with them. It was not difficult at all for a group of people to snatch a child from Lupin and Christy. At least that's what they thought. Hogwarts, 8th floor, Principal's office. A grey-white carrier pigeon landed on Dumbledore's desk. There is a bundle of paper tied to the pigeon's feet. Carrier pigeons deliver messages. This backward communication method is not even used by modern muggles. It can be said that it is incompatible with the wizarding world. But Dumbledore wasn't surprised at all. He took off the cloth and sent the pigeon away. Albus, if anything happens to Alexis, London is the next Paris. Believe me, Obscurus is easy to find. As Dumbledore unfolded the note, Grindelwald's calm and majestic voice sounded. There were 2 lines of words on the note, and with Grindelwald's voice, the light flashed past. There was silence in the principal's room. For a long time, while Dumbledore slowly rolled up the note and put it in the drawer, the portraits suddenly started to discuss it like an explosion. Grindelwald is crazy. No, it's Dumbledore, he's crazy. He's had enough of losing to Tom Riddle, and he wants to prove himself. No, it's Grindelwald. How arrogant. In my time, thugs like Gellert Grindelwald would have been hanged. In our time, he would have been burned to death. He must be burned. He's threatening. He's a KBFZ. The portraits were chatting away at each other, making the noise a headache. Phineas ran away somewhere and was covered in thatch, making him look like a scarecrow. He sat on the ground picking thatch and did not join the discussions among the portraits. Dumbledore, you have to make a choice. Dumbledore knocked on the table, making a bang 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 sound. Okay, stop arguing. The portraits all stopped and looked at Dumbledore. Alex will be fine. Gellert Grindelwald. Grindelwald. He is just worried about Alex's safety. After a pause, he added, just like a nagging woman worried about her children being hungry or freezing while traveling far away. Chapter 154. Little Barty. British Ministry of Magic. Point different from the busy scene in the past. Tomorrow is Christmas, and except for Cornelius Fudge and a few other people who know about the Azkaban operation, there is no one else here. Shortly after dark, a man with pale skin, straw-colored hair and a hat walked into the main hall. The man looked a little nervous, looking around as he walked, with a nervous and crazy smile on his face. If someone stands next to him, they can smell the unique unpleasant odor emanating from him. If the person standing next to him is a student or professor at Hogwarts, they will definitely feel that this smell is very familiar. The man came to a corner, peered inside, then retracted his head, took out a bottle of medicine from his arms, and pulled out the stopper, shivering. Yes, I want to be like my father. I have to be like my father. I haven't taken the Polyjuice potion yet. Master. Great Master. You will be free soon. The whole world is waiting to welcome you back. The man murmured to himself like crazy, stuffed a piece of hair into the bottle, shook it, and drank it. Soon, under the influence of the Polyjuice potion, the man's figure became slightly stooped, his skin saggy, his nasolabial folds deepened, and he turned into an old man. He pinched his face and refused to relax, like he was nervous. Soon. Master. Soon. He muttered to himself, took out his wand, and continued walking upstairs in a decent manner. Barty Crouch. On the way upstairs, he met the cute Umbridge, who loved pink and lace. Umbridge showed an undisguised look of disgust and stopped him. It's so late. What are you doing here? Barty Crouch Jr. lowered his head nervously, his eyes moving wildly, looking around. I'm going to do one thing. Do one thing. Yes, that's right. I'm going to do one thing. His voice was soft, despite the age of Barty Crouch Sr.'s voice. Umbridge frowned and wanted to kick Barty Crouch out, but thought that today was the minister's important day. She held back. Go. Listen, Mr. Barty Crouch. Finish your business and leave here immediately. This is not something people like you can participate in, Umbridge said proudly, and, for God's sake, Merlin, it's time for you to take a shower. You smell worse than sewers. After saying that, Umbridge stepped on her shoes and left with her head held high. She didn't want to stay for a moment longer. The smell was so bad that she almost vomited. Barty Crouch looked at Umbridge's back, his nervous smile reappearing. What a stupid woman. I mean, she is so stupid, Master. His words did not receive a response, but Barty Crouch Jr. didn't care. He was extremely grateful to be able to become the Great Master's temporary Horcrux. Barty Crouch Jr. came all the way to Fudge's office, opened the door and walked in. Half an hour later, Barty Crouch Jr. left. The office was silent, and the faint smell of blood wafted through the cracks in the door. Standing outside the Ministry of Magic, Barty Crouch Jr. thought for a moment, raised his wand, and a special spell shot into the sky, forming a green mark in the dark sky. At first glance, this mark looks like a figure made of little leprechauns, but in fact it is a huge skeleton, composed of countless green star-like things, with a large python emerging from the skull's mouth, like a tongue pointed rose higher and higher after appearing. A group of green smoke emitting dazzling light, like a new constellation against the dark night sky. After doing this, Barty Crouch Jr. nodded with satisfaction, turned around and disappeared into the night. Another half hour later, Barty Crouch Jr. appeared in a cemetery. Right here. Barty Crouch Jr. murmured to himself as he dug up a dilapidated grave. The bones inside were highly decomposed. He jumped into the pit, took out the bones, and carefully placed them aside. Then he brought out a large basin, a small altar, knives, etc. When everything was ready, Barty Crouch sat silently under the altar, looking up at the sky, waiting for something that satisfied the owner to be delivered to his door. Tonight will be the day when the master regains his new life. Azkaban. Lupin didn't know how the Order of the Phoenix and the Aura Division at Sea were fighting against an enemy of unknown origin. He only knew that he couldn't stand it any longer. Since half an hour ago, he and Christie had been facing more than a dozen prisoners. If they hadn't received Alexis' warning in advance and were prepared, they would have been killed by this group of people long ago. The current situation is still not optimistic. They have to fight and protect Harry at the same time. Lupin shook his dazed head, hugged Harry with one hand, cast a magic spell with the other hand, and then jumped towards the door leading to the prison area with Harry. He and Christie were already on the ropes, and if they wanted to prevent Harry from falling into each other's hands, they would either run out to find Alexis for help, or run in to find Snape and Sirius Black for help. But Snape and the others had been searching for so long, but there was no movement. They had been fighting for so long, but they didn't show up. It was obvious that they were busy at this time. Christie is highly tactical, especially when Alexis is out of sight. The moment she saw Lupin's actions, she guessed what Lupin was thinking. The two of them didn't need to communicate at all. Christie fought off a Death Eater and took 2 steps towards Lupin before being stopped by the Death Eater again. Seeing that Lupin and Christie were about to run into the prison area, the Lockhoff became a little anxious. They had so many people besieging 2 people for so long, but they couldn't attack them for a long time, and the other party still had this burden, and now the other party was about to escape. Once they are allowed to run into the prison area, relying on the intricate passages in the prison area, it will be difficult to block them so easily. Stop them, the Lockhoff shouted. The Death Eaters who had formed a circle immediately rushed towards the 3 of Lupin. Lupin waved his wand, blocking a blow that shattered Harry's bones into pieces, and then cast a crushing spell on Harry's back. Fortunately, the crushing spell was not very powerful, and he only had 2 bones broken. Lupin and Christie looked at each other quickly, and then the 2 of them headed towards the Death Eaters. The Death Eaters had originally surrounded the entire room airtightly, but now after their pulling, a gap had been opened at the door. What they have to do now is to go outside through that gap. Although the prison area has many passages in all directions, Lupin and the others have never entered it before. It is easy for them to get lost, or even end up in a dead end. The Death Eaters have been imprisoned here for more than 10 years. In terms of their familiarity with the terrain, Lupin and the other 3 can't keep up with the Death Eaters, even if they try to flatter each other. Although there were hordes of Dementors outside, the space outside was more open. Chapter 155, Door Key. After breaking through the iron gate, the 3 of them stopped as soon as they ran out. How about this? Christie pointed to the faint blue flame and looked at Lupin. Lupin was momentarily at a loss for words. Christie stroked his short hair and pointed behind him. Behind them, Dolohov and others had already chased him out, but they did not take action immediately. In the current situation, they were obviously cornered. This was worse than what had just happened in the reception room. Have you ever heard of Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris? Asked Lupin. Christie nodded, then shook her head. While I don't think Alexis will harm us, Remus, we have no idea of his ambitions. Obviously he shouldn't be locked up as a teacher at Hogwarts. She pointed to Harry in Lupin's arms again. Even if we are right, this kid doesn't know. Lupin fell silent again. Of course what Christie said was right. Although they all recognized that Alexis was a reliable partner, in fact they had no idea what Alexis was thinking, and no one had ever figured out what Alexis was thinking. At least that's what Lupin thought. They didn't even know what Alexis was thinking, so they couldn't talk about the ability to escape through fire. As for the Père Lachaise cemetery in Paris that Lupin mentioned before, decades ago, Grindelwald used a large-scale fire escape there to screen his followers. With the case of Grindelwald in the past, people believe that the fire protection spell is not only a very clever offensive and defensive spell, but also has the function of seeing through people's inner thoughts. Only those who truly agree with the caster's ideas from the bottom of their hearts can safely cast the spell. Pass through the fire escape guard. This kind of recognition does not stay on the surface, nor does it blindly follow. This requires that the person who passes the spell must be clear about the concept of the spellcaster and believe that it is right from the bottom of his heart. Clearly, none of them fit the bill. Bundle, I know what you're going to say. It's nothing to say. Dolokhov just raised his head when he was blocked by Christie. She took off her leather gloves and tucked her hair behind her ears, revealing her smooth forehead. In fact, Christie is a very beautiful girl. This was something everyone, except Alexis and Lupin, had realized as early as their school days. I don't think you will let us go, Christie said. Can you tell us where your time turner is hidden? Please. Seeing Dolokhov's hesitation, Christie spread her hands and simply put the wand back into her waist. At least let us know how to die. When she mentioned the time turner, Lupin's eyes lit up behind her. If the dozen or so people in front of them really came here using time turners, then they only need to delay for a while. When the time is up, the other party will disappear without them having to do anything. Time turner? Dolokhov looked confused. This reaction made Christie's face change slightly. Are you here for the time turner? Dolokhov's next words made Christie's scalp tingle. They're still struggling with the time turner. Dolokhov pointed at Christie, looked at his companions, and laughed. How interesting. They are still looking for a time turner. Ha ha ha, maritime. Alexis stopped in her tracks. In front of him, a tall man in a trench coat blocked his way. This man had a small golden hourglass hanging around his neck. Alexis pursed her lips and raised the arm holding the Elder Wand slightly. The person opposite him also made the same move, and the Elder Wand in his hand was also raised, pointing directly at Alexis. Apparition. Two voices sounded almost in no particular order. The crackling sound in the air suddenly became louder, and the two people disappeared in place at the same time. The Dementor behind Alexis only hovered in confusion for a moment before turning around and heading back to Azkaban. Aids cardboard outside the reception room. Christie was confronting Dolokhov, and just as the two sides were about to take action, Alexis' figure suddenly appeared. Great. Christie's eyes lit up. Alexis, you finally come? Halfway through Christie's words, a man exactly like him appeared next to Alexis again. Everyone looked at the two Alexis and didn't understand what happened for a while. Valley. The two Alexis looked at each other and waved their wands at the same time. Fire escape bodyguard. The blue fire dragon flew out from the tip of the Elder Wand and flew towards the opponent. Alexis raised his wrist, and the fire escape guard outside quickly condensed together to form a fire dragon, which merged with the fire escape guard he used later, and flew towards him. At the same time, the fire escape guard on the opposite side was already in front of him. He waved his wand again, and his figure disappeared, exposing Dolokhov and others behind him to the fire escape body. Dolokhov's expression changed, and he quickly led everyone to disperse. Boom. The fire dragon formed by the fire escape guard fiercely plunged into the reception room with its dragon head, and blue flames suddenly burst out, spitting out from the doors and windows of the reception room. In just a moment, the reception room was overwhelmed and collapsed with a rumble, turning into ruins. Come on. Alexis appeared next to Lupin and the other two, and after a quick explanation, he disappeared again. Catch him. The other Alexis also shouted at the three Lupins. Fire escape bodyguard. Two more blue fire dragons appeared and flew towards each other. The two Alexis used disapparition again and disappeared. What should we do? asked Lupin. Christy looked at the two Alexis who kept appearing and disappearing in front of her. She bit her lower lip gently, picked up Lupin and Harry, turned around and ran towards the coast. "He'll take care of it," Christy said. Without the three of Christy, the two Alexis no longer had any scruples, and the huge and abundant magic began to flow freely. The two people seemed to have a strange tacit understanding. They did not use other magic spells, but used fire escape and apparition from beginning to end. The figures of the two people appeared and disappeared quickly, and soon spread all over Azkaban, setting fires everywhere. The entire Azkaban immediately turned into a sea of blue fire. The fire escape protection of the two people was intertwined with each other, lighting up the night sky. From the moment he retreated to the reception room, Harry was blinded the entire time. Limited by his vision and knowledge, Harry had no idea what was going on. He only knew that the prisoners in Azkaban were attacking them like crazy, and according to Alexis, the target of this group of people was him. At this time, being led away by Lupin, Harry was worried about the fight between the two Alexis. He couldn't help but look back, and then his feet seemed to be tripped by something, and he staggered and almost fell. "Are you okay, Harry?" Lupin supported Harry, and asked with concern. Harry glanced down. It was a fairly handsome man, with a corner of dark red robe exposed from his large black cloak. The man lay on his back, eyes wide open, blood trickling down his neck. Seeing a dead body for the first time, Harry's eyes widened in horror and he couldn't help but retching. "Come on." Lupin glanced down and saw that this was the corpse of the wizard who had attempted to sneak attack them and was killed as soon as he appeared. A golden hourglass hung on the corpse's neck. "Time changer," Lupin exclaimed, bending to pick it up. "Isn't that what they came here for?" "Stop," Alexis shouted in the distance. Lupin looked up subconsciously. But it's too late. Lupin took hold of the time turner. The next moment, there was a nauseating feeling, as if a hook was hooked behind the belly button and pulled hard. Lupin, Christy, and Harry disappeared from the spot. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156, Alexis from the Future. In a gloomy cemetery. Barty Crouch Jr. stood up. Christy, Lupin and Harry appeared in front of them. As soon as they appeared, Christy and Lupin immediately sandwiched Harry in the middle, raising their wands and looking around cautiously. This smell. Harry, who was protected in the center, smelled a familiar odor. He frowned and sniffed with his nose. The lightning scar on his forehead stung again. "This is the smell of Quirrell. Voldemort." Barty Crouch Jr. came out of the shadows. He took off his hat, clapped his hands, and came to stand in front of Lupin. After little Barty applauded, he faced Lupin's wand without paying any attention. He pointed behind them. "Remus, you'd better take a look at these." At the same time, Christy's voice came from behind. Lupin turned and looked. In the woods surrounding the cemetery, a figure walked out and quickly surrounded them. Bellatrix, Darlahoff, Rookwood, Mulciber, Gargson, Old Noel, Notarabaston Rodolphus, Old Crab, Avery and many other Death Eaters. The elite all appeared in front of them. "Dear Master." Bella walked up to little Barty and said something reluctantly. At this time, she couldn't see the madness in Azkaban at that time. "Little Barty, you win." Little Barty raised his head proudly. "Let's get started. Master can't wait any longer." Deep in Azkaban, the three people in front of Snape and Sirius Black suddenly disappeared. Not only Bella, Old Crab and Avery, when they walked out of the prison area, all the Death Eaters they had seen before were gone. The entire Azkaban had turned into a sea of blue fire, and except for the two of them, they didn't see a single living person. Alexis. The two looked at each other, and Sirius Black felt a strong uneasiness in his heart, and he shouted loudly. What responded to him was a blue fire dragon coming from behind. Snape's expression changed. He waved the wand in his hand, blocked the fire dragon with a curse, and then silently and anxiously rushed to the ruins of the reception room. Deep in Azkaban. At this time, this place has also been reduced to ruins. The two Alexis finally stopped. Just as Alexis was about to speak, he on the other side ripped off the golden hourglass from his neck and threw it to him. After taking a deep look at him, he took out another identical golden hourglass from his arms, the fluctuating hourglass, and disappeared. In front of Alexis. Don't let them die again. Alexis caught the golden hourglass and fiddled with it twice. Her face turned ugly. This isn't a time turner at all. This is a door key. Nurmengard. The weather in Nurmengard today was not very good. The roaring sea wind bent the trees on the island. On the rough sea, a small boat came to the shore, and Alexis came ashore with a golden hourglass hanging on it. He walked to the stone castle in the center of the island in a familiar way, looked up at the windows on the stone castle that exuded orange firelight, and was slightly lost in thought. His eyes seemed to have lost focus, and he was lost in memories. After an unknown amount of time, the cold rain fell, pulling him away from his memories. Alexis opened the door and walked upstairs. The familiar rough style, the familiar empty bedroom, the familiar crooked tables, chairs, and beds, the familiar horror set props and toys, piled in the corner. Go. An old man was facing him sideways, standing by the window, and looking into the distance. The old man was wearing a snow-white double-breasted training suit, with a high nose and deep eyes, which made him look a little funny. Grindelwald. Alexis stood at the door, licked her lips, and shouted hoarsely. Old man Grindelwald turned to look, his eyes full of surprise. Little Alexis. Why are you back? Alexis' eyes immediately turned red, and she rushed forward and hugged Grindelwald. Grindelwald stiffened, his arms hovered in the air for a moment. He hugged him gently, and patted his back. What's wrong? What happened? Someone bullied you? Alexis's tears could no longer be held back, and they surged out like a flood that burst a dam, immediately soaking Grindelwald's shoulders. Good boy, what happened? Tell me. Grindelwald asked warmly. Alexis shook her head desperately, but tears couldn't stop pouring out. Miss you, Grindelwald. Grindelwald didn't say anything. He hugged Alexis and patted his back gently. From the moment he picked Alexis back up, the memory left to him was that of a naughty guy, jumping up and down all day long, making mischief, whether he was scaring him with a straight face, or trying to reason with all his heart. Alexis, he always goes his own way, and continues to get into trouble. Alexis gave Grindelwald the impression that he was fearless and courageous. It was the first time for me to lie in his arms and cry like this. When did Alexis have such a vulnerable side? This made Grindelwald a little uncomfortable for a while. Okay, Alexis. Alexis left Grindelwald's arms. Grindelwald spoke kindly, and was about to ask carefully what happened, but his eyes were attracted by the golden hourglass around Alexis' neck. Alexis looked down at the golden hourglass he was carrying, and then looked up at Grindelwald. He raised his hand and gently wiped away his tears. You already know, he said in a hoarse voice. Grindelwald said nothing, and the kind smile on his face disappeared and turned into a livid color. He turned towards the bed. Behind him, as soon as Alexis took one foot forward, ropes suddenly swept toward him. Without looking back, Grindelwald overturned the bedboard, pulled out the wooden box, opened it, picked out a wand from inside, turned around, and faced Alexis. Grindelwald. Light blue light emerged from the tip of Grindelwald's staff, heading towards Alexis. Alexis quickly broke free from the rope and rushed out of the house, barely avoiding an imperious curse. Listen to my explanation, old man. Alexis hid in the doorway and shouted into the room. I just want to see you. I really miss you. Without saying a word, Grindelwald walked towards the door step by step, the tip of the wand in his hand shining brightly. Alexis fell silent outside the door. Green light flickered on the tip of the staff, and the moment Grindelwald walked to the door, a killing curse flew toward the shadow outside the door. Boom. The killing curse didn't hit Alexis, but hit the wall point. The vibration caused some dust to fall from the ceiling. You're not Alexis. Grindelwald finally spoke. With a flick of the wand in his hand, the dark corridor was immediately illuminated. Chapter 157. Older and Stronger. After a brief silence, giggles came from downstairs. The laughter kept getting louder, like a ghost. Alexis walked up step by step, wand in hand. How did you find out? Alexis asked. He lowered his head and picked up the time turner hanging around his neck and shook it. Just rely on it? Grindelwald shook his head. Why am I not Alexis? Did you think Alexis wouldn't choose to use it? No. You are wrong. As Alexis spoke, his expression gradually became crazy. His voice kept getting louder and louder, echoing in the corridor. Later, he even roared. You think you know Alexis well? Do you know him well? No. You don't understand me at all. You don't understand at all how it feels when my friends and father leave me one by one as the years go by. You don't know anything. No matter, Alexis roared loudly, Grindelwald remained calm. He quietly waited for Alexis to finish speaking before speaking. Alexis will not violate the principles of using the time turner, and he will not take risks to study time magic and research on the Deathly Hallows. This is my agreement with him. Once Alexis touches them, he's not Alexis anymore. The rules for using the time converter are that under normal circumstances, it can only take people back to time within 5 hours, and the user can only stay for 1 hour. If it exceeds 5 hours, or stays for more than 1 hour, it will bring unknown adverse effects. As for the Deathly Hallows, that was what Grindelwald was pursuing when he was young. Now that he is old, especially after having Alexis, these things to him are not even as good as successfully replacing them for little Alexis. Diapers are fun. He once pursued the Deathly Hallows, and pursued eternal life, and he understood the taboo of death point. Therefore, he had made an agreement with Alexis, since he was a child, that no matter what Alexis studied in the future, he would never touch death. Looking at the mental state of Alexis from the future in front of him, Grindelwald deeply suspected that his and Dumbledore's worries had become a reality. The visions he saw in the mirror of their eyes may have all come true for Alexis. It's not me you love at all. Alexis over there was still chattering, looking increasingly crazier. You love yourself. You have been manipulating me as a tool. You keep saying that you won't interfere with me and that you will always support me, but once what I do exceeds your expectations, you are like this just now. Jealous Grindelwald, hypocritical Grindelwald. You want to forcibly transplant your ambitions into me. You want me to complete your ridiculous vision for you. You are just like him. No matter what period you are in, you are the same. Ho ho ho. Alexis looked crazy. Her eyes widened, and she roared at Grindelwald. Grindelwald calmly raised his hand, green light flashing on the tip of the staff. Avatar Coddler, the killing curse hit Alexis. Alexis's eyes widened, and he made a ho 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 sound from his mouth, looking at Grindelwald in disbelief. His body slowly broke into pieces. Ding, the golden hourglass fell to the ground. Grindelwald calmly picked up the time turner without looking at it, turned around and returned to the bedroom, threw the wand and time turner into the box, closed the lid, put it back under the bed, laid out the bed, and returned with a broom. Go to the corridor, sweep up the fly ash that Alexis turned into, collect it, and dump it into the trash. Little Alexis, you won't be like this. Definitely not. Grindelwald muttered to himself, returned to the bedroom, poked the broom in the corner, and sat calmly on the edge of the bed. The hands on his knees began to tremble. He beat his chest hard in pain, and his eyes began to turn slightly red. What? He was like a wounded beast, and his old and painful voice echoed in the stone castle. After awing, Grindelwald regained his composure. He walked upstairs, came back with a carrier pigeon, tore off a piece of paper, tied it to the pigeon's leg after writing it, and came to the window. Go and find Albus. Grindelwald stroked the pigeon's feathers and let it fly. Turning around, Grindelwald lifted up the bedboard, opened the box. His eyes lingered on the golden hourglass for a moment, then he grabbed it and went upstairs. He took out the last pigeon, put the time turner into a cloth bag, and tied it to the pigeon's leg. Go find Alexis. He also released a homing pigeon. Tell little Alex that I didn't take advantage of him, and that he's a pride of mine. Adopting him was the best decision in my life. Azkaban. Alexis, along with Sirius Black and Snape, had already joined Rufus. The incoming unknown enemy retreated, and the Dementors returned to normal. Did you find the time turner? Rufus asked breathlessly. Alexis shook her head. Rufus, Harry has been captured. Rufus nodded, remained silent for a moment and said, what are you going to do? Alexis turned back, and looked at the sea. At this time, the flames on Azkaban had been extinguished. The sea in the dark night was like a mysterious and dangerous unknown land, which made people feel scared. I'm going to find him, Rufus. You have to rush back to the Ministry of Magic. Their target is not just Harry, but also the Ministry of Magic. Moody, I don't want to argue with you right now. Mad-Eye Moody was about to say something else, but Alexis beat him to it. You take Snape and the others, and go to Hogwarts to find Dumbledore and get ready. No, instead of preparing for Voldemort's return, I will kill him completely at the place where he was resurrected. Alexis watched Rufus leave with the auras, and said in a deep voice, what I'm worried about is that the ostrich minister has been killed. Also, after losing Voldemort, the Death Eater's crazy counterattack will be even more terrifying than Voldemort's resurrection. With Voldemort around, and the Death Eaters under Voldemort's leadership, they will carry out destruction in a planned and targeted manner, and everything they do will be traceable. Without Voldemort, these people would be a mess. They could cause destruction without any purpose, and it was not impossible to kill all the people in London, just because of a whim. Their every move will be without plan or purpose, and they will do things entirely based on their mood. Although it would be difficult for such Death Eaters to accomplish the same big things as when Voldemort was leading them, they would be difficult to catch, and the legacy they would leave behind would be long-lasting. Originally, Alexis planned to slowly eat away at the Death Eaters and turn Voldemort into a bare-bones commander. By that time, Voldemort would be just a more powerful dark wizard, and would not cause any waves. But everything was broken by this operation in Azkaban. He could either let Voldemort go, and let Voldemort lead the Death Eaters, restraining this group of lunatics, while creating greater hidden dangers, or he could kill Voldemort and let the Death Eaters completely lose their restraints and turn into mad dogs running around the world. Between these two options, Alexis decided in just a moment to kill Voldemort. Because Voldemort's existence will directly threaten the safety of everyone he cares about. Grindelwald, Dumbledore, Aberforth, Lupin, Black. These people could all die from Voldemort. After Voldemort was killed, the remaining Death Eaters, although they were full of poison, at least could not pose a threat to Grindelwald and the others. Grindelwald had taught him to choose the lesser of two evils. Chapter 158, Voldemort's Resurrection Ceremony. It was a dark overgrown object, with a tall yew on the right, and behind it a chapel, and an owl on the left, with a fine old house on it. It looks like a classic set from a horror story. A section of the marble tombstone in the cemetery had been knocked down, and was leaning on the ground. The grave had been dug up, and there was a dark pit in the center. It can accommodate about 2 adults and a teenager. The 3 Harrys were tied next to the tomb, with torches lit around them point in the light of the fire swaying in the cold wind. Harry could vaguely see the name on the stone tablet not far away. Tom Riddle, however, his glasses had been knocked off in the previous struggle, and he could only see a blur of the writing under the name on the stone tablet. A fire was set up next to the stone monument, and a huge crucible sat on it. The crucible was like a bathtub, and it could even hold a person. The 3 people were surrounded by Death Eaters, and they stared directly at Harry with inexplicable excitement in their eyes. Little Barty took out a piece of black stuff from his sleeve, and stuffed it into Harry's mouth, then ran to the crucible and got busy. Harry struggled hard, and then an icy chill came over him. He looked down, and saw a huge snake snaking on the grass, surrounding the 3 of them. The big snake stopped in front of Harry, raised its head, and hissed at him, sticking out its tongue. "Hey!" Christy beside Harry yelled in dissatisfaction. "You'd better keep it away." Her words caused a burst of laughter from the surrounding Death Eaters. Little Barty knocked on the crucible and shouted dissatisfied, "Quiet! Quiet!" The Death Eaters calmed down. "Harry! Harry!" Lupin turned his head and looked at Harry, wanting to say something to comfort him, but obviously, in the current situation, any words of comfort were pale and useless. Perhaps the best comfort would be to break free from the rope and attack the surrounding Death Eaters one by one with an Avada Kedavra. Harry looked dumbfounded, as if he was frightened by the scene in front of him. In fact, he was indeed a little scared. He didn't know what this group of people was going to do, and he didn't even understand how they were in Azkaban one moment, and in the cemetery the next. Looking at the huge crucible next to him, I felt that these people might have contracted the bad habit of cannibalism, and they were going to cook him and eat him. As soon as this idea came up, it spread out immediately, and became out of control, which made Harry shudder. "It's okay, Harry. Don't be afraid." Lupin comforted him with pale words. On the other side, little Barty is ready. The liquid in the crucible heats up very quickly. Not only did the surface begin to boil, but sparks shot out, as if it were on fire. The steam became thicker and thicker, and soon enveloped the entire cemetery. The rustling Death Eaters around them fell completely silent, staring directly at the cauldron. Little Barty took 2 steps back. His whole body was shaking, as if he was going crazy. He raised his wand, closed his eyes, and said to the night sky, "Father's bones, donated unintentionally, can make your son regenerate." As the wand was pulled, a wisp of dust flew up from the side of the crucible, and fell into the crucible. Only then did the 3 Harrys notice that there was a pile of dead bones piled next to the stone tablet. In the crucible, the diamond-like liquid surface burst, making a hissing sound, sparks flying, and the liquid bubbling, as if some violent reaction had occurred, and then they turned blue. Better to fail, whatever they are doing. It's better to fail. The crucible is about to explode. Explode. Harry's mouth was gagged and speechless. He stared at the crucible, and prayed secretly in his heart. However, reality did not develop as Harry thought. The liquid in the crucible gradually calmed down. The eyes of the surrounding Death Eaters shone brightly, and their breathing became softer. Little Barty pulled out a shining silver dagger, and his voice began to tremble. "Your servant's flesh, donated voluntarily, can regenerate your master." He held the dagger, took 2 steps forward, came to the crucible, and swung it hard. He cut off his left arm. Little Barty's severed arm fell into the crucible with a plop, and the liquid surface that had just calmed down started churning again. After a violent reaction, the blue liquid gradually transformed into a conspicuous fiery red. The liquid in the crucible seemed to glow, illuminating the surrounding area in red, which made the scene even more bizarre. The severed arm floated up and down in the crucible and disappeared, and the liquid level gradually calmed down. The breathing of the surrounding Death Eaters also gradually became heavier from light to heavy, and some even couldn't help but cheer quietly. The man was glared at by little Barty fiercely and immediately covered his mouth. Valley. Little Barty held the dagger with a pale face. The dagger was still stained with his blood and dripping, and he came to Harry. "The blood of your enemies forced to be Javen can bring your enemies back to life." Harry struggled, fear written in his eyes. "Let him go. Get away. You bastard. Let him go." Lupin and Christy struggled fiercely, and Christy even cursed, but to no avail. Their wands had long been broken, and they were tied tightly with ropes. Little Barty shook his body, raised his dagger, and stabbed it hard into Harry's arm. Harry struggled violently in pain. "Stop, you bastard. The scum of the Crouch family. Bastard." Christy also struggled violently. She yelled and cursed, and her short hair danced wildly, like an angry lioness. She even kept trying to turn her head and reach for little Barty, trying to bite off a piece of meat from little Barty. "Old buddy should flush you into the toilet. You bastard. Thug. Disgusting thing that only bullies children. Let him go. If you have the guts, let me go, and let me teach you a lesson, eh?" Before Christy could finish her words, she was hit by a heart-breaking bone. She groaned and her whole body began to twist violently. Bella waved her wand wildly and stepped forward. She reached out and gently touched Christy's face. Her hands were cold and slippery, just like the snake in front of them. Disgusting. "She's still useful." Little Barty shook his body, glanced at Bella and said. Bella curled her lips in dissatisfaction, and waved her wand. The cutting out of the bone stopped. Behind Barty Jr., Darlahov stepped forward to help hold Harry down. Barty Jr. took out a bottle and caught it at Harry's elbow. Thick blood dripped into the bottle. Darlahov let go of his hand, and when he stood up, he knocked out the struggling Lupin on the other side. Little Barty held the bottle and came to the big crucible. Pour Harry's blood into the cauldron. The crucible that had just calmed down boiled again, this time far more violently than before. The liquid in the crucible seemed to turn into flames, rising suddenly to the height of a person. Sparks were flying everywhere, bright and dazzling. Suddenly, all the liquid in the crucible fell back into the crucible, and the flame went out. Large jets of white steam emerged from the crucible. A tall and thin man's figure passed through the steam, and appeared in everyone's eyes. The man was tall and thin, like a skeleton. The breathing of the Death Eaters around him became heavier than ever before. They stared at the figure closely, with expectations and anxiety on their faces. "Get me dressed," A man's voice came from the white steam. The Death Eaters around him were dancing excitedly, and they tried hard to suppress their excitement so as not to cheer. Little Barty was swaying, picked up a set of clothes, walked into the steam, and put the clothes on the man. Soon, the man walked out of the white mist and came to Harry. Harry stared at the strange and ugly creature in front of him with wide eyes, feeling an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Owner. Bella couldn't bear it any longer. She knelt down at the man's feet devoutly, gently kissed the man's toes, and raised her head, with deep fascination and madness in her eyes. The surrounding Death Eaters all knelt down, no longer suppressing their excitement. Voldemort is resurrected. Chapter 159. Voldemort's speech. Harry Potter. After Voldemort briefly communicated with his followers, he turned his attention to the three people in the middle. He chose Harry first. "You are sitting at my father's grave." He spoke like a snake, hissing. "He is a muggle and a fool, just like your mother. But they all have their uses, don't they? Harry Potter, when you were young, your mother died to protect you, which allowed you to escape. I killed my father. You see, he came in handy after his death." Voldemort laughed. He paced back and forth in front of Harry, his eyes wandering up and down Harry's body, like a picky customer selecting goods. At his feet, the big snake was still swaying back and forth. "See the house on the hillside, Potter? My father lived there, and my mother, who was a wizard, lived in this village, and fell in love with him, but when she revealed her identity, he stupidly abandoned her. My father didn't like magic. He left her, and went back to those stupid muggle parents. I wasn't born yet. Potter, my mother died in childbirth, when she gave birth to me. I grew up in a muggle orphanage, but I swear, I will find him and take revenge. I took revenge on that stupid fool." Voldemort walked faster and faster, and began to wave his arms, like an excited speaker. "Potter, listen to me recalling my family history. I even feel a little sad. Harry, but this is my home, my real family." He waved his hand sharply, pointing at the Death Eaters around him. The Death Eaters let out a roar, extremely excited. Harry only felt that this was a madman. He was in a daze, partly because of the pain on his arm, and partly because the lightning scar on his forehead was painfully hot, making him unable to concentrate at all. "And you, beautiful Ms. Connor." Voldemort stretched out his pale paws, grabbed a strand of Kristy's hair, and sniffed it gently, like a pervert. "I heard that you are very close to that guy named Alexis. I hope you are really like the rumors." "Beautiful lady." Kristy had now recovered from the heartbreaking pain. Her forehead was covered with sweat and her face was pale. She glared at Voldemort fiercely, then opened her mouth and bit Voldemort's finger. Unfortunately, Voldemort was very flexible and escaped in advance. "Tom Riddle, Voldemort, you're a madman, a fraud, KBFZ." Kristy didn't seem to know what fear was. Facing Voldemort, who was frightened by the wizarding world, she still had the courage to curse. "Are you particularly disgusted with yourself? Your father is a muggle. Ha ha ha. Voldemort, no matter what you do, no matter how gorgeously you package your tricks to deceive ghosts, it can't change the fact Voldemort, Tom Marvolo Riddle, you are not a pureblood at all." Kristy took the initiative to approach Voldemort, with a sarcastic look on her face, and said loudly, "You are just a pathetic person who pretends to be a pureblood and envy others who are purebloods. You don't get father's love, and you don't have mother's love, since you were a child. You are a bastard that no one wants. You know why no one wants you? Because you are a burden. You claim to be a descendant of Slytherin, but who knows? Poor thing." Voldemort's face darkened visibly. There was no need for him to take action at all. Bella on the side had already rushed up and gave Kristy a hard slap. One side of Kristy's face immediately swelled up, and the swelling squeezed her eye, leaving only a gap in one eye. The corners of her mouth were also broken. Pooh. Kristy spat out a mouthful of bloody saliva and stared at Bella with one eye. "Female cousin, is this all you can do?" She turned her gaze and looked at Voldemort. "Poor thing, you bitch can't do it. This is all he can do. This is not as good as the Cruciatus curse just now. I'm not happy yet." Bella was furious and immediately stepped forward and slapped her again. Kristy received a slap and burst into laughter. "Is this how much patience you have? You're such a useless bitch." Bella pulled out her wand, but was stopped by Voldemort. Ms. Connor, it seems you don't need your mouth anymore. Christy sneered in return. That's not what I said when I gave birth to you. Voldemort shook his head, calmed down his anger, and left Christy. Behind him, a Death Eater stepped forward and blocked Christy's mouth. Remus Lupin. Voldemort came to Lupin and slapped him awake. Don't be excited, don't be excited. SHHSH, he cupped Lupin's cheek. You don't have to die for the time being, you don't have to die for the time being. I know you're not like them, Remus Lupin. You are different from them. You are a werewolf, just like Fenrir. You do not have to be with them. Then do I want to be with you? Lupin sneered. Unfortunately, your approach doesn't appeal to me at all. We can kill you once, and we can kill you a second time, Voldemort. I have even seen your end, faster than last time. Voldemort stared at Lupin seriously and said nothing. He turned around and faced the Death Eaters. He raised his hideous face, opened his two slit-like nostrils and sniffed. I smell guilt, he said. There's a stench of guilt in the air. The Death Eaters around him trembled. Everyone seemed to want to move back, but didn't dare to move. I see you, healthy and sound, with the same magic as before. I ask myself why there are wizards who never come to help their masters, the people they swore allegiance to. They must have believed that I was dead and thought I was finished. They sneaked back to the enemy and begged for mercy. They said they were innocent and didn't know it. They were bewitched. I ask myself again, why don't they believe that I will make a comeback? Didn't they know that I prepared the method of resurrection a long time ago? Didn't they see with their own eyes that I'm stronger than any wizard? I didn't get an answer. In the face of traitors, I gave them to my enemies. Because I, your master, do not need traitors as servants. Perhaps they believe there is a more powerful force that can defeat Voldemort. Perhaps they have pledged their allegiance to someone else, the protector of mudbloods and muggles, Albus Dumbledore. Upon hearing Dumbledore's name, the Death Eaters started to stir. Some were muttering something under their breath, while others were shaking their heads. Voldemort ignored him and continued his speech. Is it the lonely old man imprisoned on the island, Gellert Grindelwald? Still that ridiculous boy, Alexis Felix? Perhaps this is, he pointed towards Harry. The ridiculous stupidity of the world, that they put their hope in such a child. Maybe he hasn't learned anything from Dumbledore. He's even confused about his own life experience. Chapter 160, Taking Drugs. It doesn't matter anymore. On the Great Road, this group of traitors are just like those fools. They are no longer worthy of following the great Voldemort. The great victory would be without them. My loyal slaves, now declare to the world that I, the true master of the world, am back. He roared loudly and spread his arms. The Death Eaters howled excitedly and raised their wands. A huge green mark floated into the night sky and stayed there for a long time. All the Death Eaters cheered. The dark mark takes off. This is their master, the great Voldemort, announcing to the world that he is back. This time, the Dementors will join us. They are our natural allies. We will recall the banished giants. I will retrieve all my loyal servants and regain a group of magical creatures that everyone fears. Voldemort continued his speech, pausing every time he spoke, and the Death Eaters around him took advantage of this momentary pause to cheer. Then, he stopped talking and frowned. The howling cold wind stopped at some point. Maybe it was the enthusiasm of the Death Eaters that drove away the cold wind, or maybe even the cold wind was afraid of him. Suddenly, the flame on the torch suddenly surged, and the warm flame turned orange and rose into the sky. They gathered in the air, transformed into animals of various colors, and fell again. Each animal landed on the ground, immediately igniting everything around it, and rushing towards the nearby Death Eaters. The cemetery fell into a brief commotion. A tall and thin figure walked down the hillside. Behind him, a dense crowd of wizards appeared, quickly surrounding the cemetery like a tide. Tom Marvolo Riddle. Alexis stood in front of Voldemort and raised his hand. Behind him, blue flames ignited and spread rapidly, surrounding the huge cemetery. Alexis. Christy's face was swollen, and she shouted excitedly when she saw Alexis. Alexis turned her gaze and stayed on Christy's face for a moment, thinking carefully, and then glanced at Lupin and Harry who were tied together, and then confirmed that this was Christy. He nodded at Christy and turned his gaze back to Voldemort. The speech was good, he said. Unfortunately, it sounded like brainwashing. It's a bit like a miserable guy pitying himself. Alexis tilted his head, his words full of ridicule. Avada, who had been standing behind Voldemort, waved her wand, and Alexis had already raised her arm when the killing curse was halfway through. Avatar Coddler, the dark green beam of light hit Bella with killing magic. Bella seemed to be under a petrification spell and froze in place. Her eyes widened, and she looked at Alexis in disbelief. Then, her body began to dissipate in the wind. Is that all? Alexis moved his shoulders, and his whole body seemed to be trembling slightly with excitement. You have really bad taste. After he finished speaking, he ignored the Death Eaters rushing from a distance, took out a handful of bottles and cans from his arms, smashed them into pieces, and poured them into his mouth. Colorful and various potions were mixed together, and Alexis swallowed them. Go. He wiped the water stains around his mouth, and his body trembled more violently. His face turned red under the firelight, and his eyes quickly regained their brilliance after a brief period of confusion. Voldemort, I'm here to take revenge. His voice became hoarse, as if he had just swallowed sulfuric acid and burned his throat. At this time, Alexis felt as if his whole body was about to burn up. The world in front of him turned red and then became slightly distorted. The sound that entered his ears seemed to be separated by a layer of water, making it difficult to hear clearly. He twitched his nose and smelled a smell of sulfur, mixed with a familiar spicy smell. He licked his teeth. His mouth was numb. He raised his head, smiled ferociously at Voldemort, and the next moment, disappeared from the spot. Voldemort grabbed Bella's wand, and just halfway through swinging his arm, the hair on his back suddenly stood up. If he really had hair. He instinctively pulled Dalahov beside him to block him behind him. Dalahov let out a scream, and turned into ashes. Voldemort turned around and only caught a glimpse of the hem of his windbreaker. The next moment, Alexis disappeared again. The blue flame turned into a fire snake, approaching Voldemort's face. Voldemort had no time to cast a spell, so he could only pull little Barty in front of him again, while he quickly retreated. Little Barty was hit by the fire escape body, and the fire snake immediately wrapped around his legs. Little Barty opened his mouth and screamed. The fire escape body wrapped around Little Barty's body, got into his mouth, and disappeared. Little Barty's scream stopped abruptly, and his entire head glowed with a faint blue light. The next moment, his eyes, his nose, and mouth were violently bursting with blue flames. In just a moment, Little Barty turned into charcoal, and was blown away by the wind. Alexis' figure was like a ghost, constantly flashing around Voldemort, tossing and turning. His whole body transformed into a mobile turret, and black magic spewed out, approaching Voldemort. Voldemort was beaten so hard that he had no chance to fight back. He could only keep retreating, pulling over one Death Eater to block the curse for him. Soon, wherever Voldemort went, the melee crowd immediately dispersed. This is how great you are, huh? Another killing curse was killed by a Death Eater. Alexis appeared in front of Voldemort, slightly bent over, lowered his body, and panted heavily and asked. He asked, his body shaking violently, and he shook his head vigorously. At this time, the sounds around him suddenly became very clear again, as if everyone was shouting loudly in his ears, which made him extremely irritated. Alexis' eyes were sometimes confused and sometimes focused, and his thinking began to become confusing. The potions he drank before were still in the debugging stage, and had not yet been completed. Many of them were only in the theoretical stage, and had not been debugged at all. Moreover, with so many medicines mixed together, the medicinal properties of each other have never been tested. These medicines can improve his sensory sensitivity and stimulate his motor nerves, but the side effects after taking them. He had clinically tested several potions, and most of the mice had ended badly, with their wands still in the pocket of Alexis' windbreaker. At this time, the strength of the medicine came up, allowing him to completely suppress Voldemort in a short period of time, leaving Voldemort unable to fight back. However, the sequelae were also reflected. His mind seemed to be filled with countless information, which made the mind is no longer clear. This was shorter than he expected. Chapter 161, Pocket Watch and Photo. Go help Alexis. Not far away, after Christie, who had been rescued by members of the Order of the Phoenix, Killed a Death Eater. He glanced at Alexis and shouted loudly to Lupin, who was protecting Harry not far away. She didn't know what Alexis drank, but it was obvious that it was not normal for Alexis to be shaking all over, unable to control the spell at all, and hitting several friendly soldiers in succession. She knew that Alexis had been studying flowers and plants, and what she wanted to drink was the results of his research. Lupin raised his head and glanced at Alexis. At this time, Alexis had begun to attack indiscriminately. He would throw out a magic spell randomly for any creature that appeared around him and was sensed by him. Sometimes it's the killing curse, sometimes it's the cruciatus curse, sometimes it's the levitating curse, and sometimes it's even a cleansing curse that has no effect. Alexis's disorganized attack gave Voldemort the opportunity to counterattack. Fortunately, Alexis's instincts were still there, and he relied on his quick reactions to dodge Voldemort's attacks. But this situation cannot last long. Listen, Harry, follow Flitwick and run outside, and don't look back. Lupin handed Harry to Professor Flitwick not far away, and ran towards Alexis. He only took 2 steps before he stopped. At this time, Flitwick behind him had just pulled Harry, and started to prepare to retreat outside. Run. Lupin's expression changed as he watched Alexis' actions, and he turned and shouted at Flitwick. Lupin's voice attracted the attention of the nearby wizards. They glanced in Alexis' direction, and then their expressions changed greatly, and they ran away without caring about fighting. At this time, in the center of the cemetery, next to Tom Riddle's tombstone, Alexis suddenly stopped. He no longer used his sharp motor nerves to avoid Voldemort. He opened his arms, trembling all over, and raised his hands high. The Elder Wand in his hand was like a baton in the hand of a conductor, dancing back and forth gracefully. The surrounding blue flames jumped back and forth as he danced, and the flames rose violently. Not only the fire escape protection, but also the previous fierce fire spell, the blazing flames. All the magic spells he had used before, all the flames were included in his command system. The flames twisted and swelled in the storm, spreading and bridled around. Dark blue, orange, red, light yellow. Flames of various colors are intertwined with each other, twisted and mixed together, wildly devouring everything around them. The entire cemetery instantly turned into a sea of fire. Alexis stood in the sea of fire, like a god of fire, directing the flames and attacking everything around him indiscriminately. His hair began to curl due to the high temperature, and the windbreaker he was wearing couldn't stand the heat and began to curl up. Opposite him, Voldemort raised his hands to block the heat, but it was in vain. His brand new robes were even burned with holes. The flames finally circled and gathered together to form a pillar of fire that reached the sky and the earth. They twisted like a tornado and swallowed up the 2 people completely. Behind the hillside, the people of the Order of the Phoenix and a small number of Death Eaters stood there clearly separated, staring at the pillar of fire not far away with wide eyes, looking at each other in confusion. Even standing here, they could still feel the scorching heat from the fire pillar in the cemetery. It burned their skin and sent out bursts of stinging pain. The yew trees had turned into fire trees at this time, and the trees a little further away also began to burn, as if there was only fire left in the world and nothing else. The strong temperature difference brings hot wind, which carries the fly ash and spreads it in all directions rumbling. There was a sound from the fire pillar, and along with a slight explosion, a lot of things scattered out, piled up into a hill, and were quickly swallowed up by the flames. The wind swirled and brought a chain, which Harry grabbed. This is a gold-plated chain, made of beads the size of rice grains. The delicate metal material has been slightly deformed by the high temperature. The hot wind was still spreading, and an oval object reflecting golden light stuck to the ground and rolled to Harry's feet. Harry raised his arms to cover his face and struggled to bend down to pick it up. It was a gold pocket watch. Harry pressed the switch. Perhaps the high temperature had damaged the internal structure of the pocket watch, but the cover did not open. He opened it hard, and the cover was opened, revealing the exquisite dial. There is a photo inlaid on the cover of the pocket watch. The photo is divided into 7 grids with 6 surrounding them. Dumbledore, Lupin, Black, James, and Alexis at the center. Harry only knew these 5. The hot wind blew again, causing the slightly yellowed photo to fly into the air. Harry stretched out his hand to reach it, but could not reach it. The photo curled up and burst into flames. Each person in the photo was smiling and engulfed by tongues of fire. Eventually, the photo turned into a pile of ashes and was blown away by the hot wind. Alexis. Harry shuddered, clutched his pocket watch, and shouted with a cry, "Mr. Alexis." In the distance, the fire pillar began to shrink, first turning blue, then orange, and finally returning to normal. Lupin hugged Harry, who was about to run over, and hugged him tightly. He looked at the remaining flames and widened his eyes, hoping that someone would come out of it, but in the ruins of the flames, apart from piles of objects and a thick layer of ashes, there were only charred corpses lying in grave pits. A gust of wind blew, and ashes rose into the sky, revealing what was underneath. There were galleons there. There were gold vessels. The silver had already seeped into the ground. The books and paper or parchment had been reduced to ashes, blown away by the wind, and the wood was also reduced to ashes. All that's left is the burnt, deformed goldware and a bunch of twisted glass, like a work of art created by an artist whose imagination reaches the limit of imagination. Everyone stared blankly at the white ground in front of them, unable to react for a while. "Catch them." Moody was the first to come to his senses. He yelled and threw himself at the Death Eater beside him. The other members were called back by his shout. Some followed and rushed towards the Death Eaters, while others walked towards the cemetery in a daze. Voldemort was dead, and the remaining Death Eaters were powerless to resist. In this regard, Alexis's judgment was wrong. He knew very well the horror of a thought. If Voldemort's thought was not eliminated, even if Voldemort died, he would be resurrected in another way. There are few profound principles, but he does not understand the human heart. After Voldemort died, the Death Eaters' combat effectiveness plummeted, and they were quickly defeated and defeated. Those who died, and those who were captured. But what happens to the Death Eaters has nothing to do with Harry, Christy, Lupin and Flitwick. They gathered around a pile of rags that remained, after being burned by the flames, speechless. Harry had begun to sob, and the others had red eyes. Christy was wailing, and she knelt on the ground, frantically pulling at the tatters, trying to dig Alexis out of it. The high temperature immediately burned her hands red, blistered, and then fester. But she couldn't care less. She just wanted to get Alexis out of it. Chapter 162. Aftermath. Wong wong wong. The weak barking of dogs sounded from under the charred yew trees, attracting everyone's attention. A big black dog that smelled like meat was lying there, with half of its red and blistered palms exposed under him. The hair on the big dog's body has been burned away, and the exposed skin has been burned and carbonized. The black dog's eyes are dry, and the ups and downs of its abdomen are almost invisible. Ugh! The big black dog's body twitched violently, and a weak whimper came out of its open mouth. "Be black?" Lupin trembled and gave a tentative cry. A black shadow jumped out and came to the side of the big black dog. The greasy hair on his head was burned to pieces and looked like it had been gnawed by a dog. Snape squatted on the ground and carefully moved the big black dog away, revealing a charred human body. He sniffed and felt the weak airflow. Snape pulled out his wand, lowered the tip, and moved it slowly along Alexis' body. "Heal quickly," Snape murmured. The cracked carbonized skin fell off, revealing the red meat inside. Alexis groaned unconsciously and did not move. "Alexis." Christy got up, ran to Alexis, and hugged him tremblingly. She wanted to laugh, but the tears couldn't stop flowing. Lupin and others also reacted and immediately gathered around. The black dog's form gradually degraded, revealing a mangled body. Alexis's black screamed like a mosquito, wanting Flitwick, who was treating him, to go check on Alexis first. "He's alive. He's alive, Blake." Flitwick comforted Black, wiped his eyes, and shouted with a thick nasal voice, "He's still alive." Snape withdrew his wand and rummaged through his pockets, only to take out 2 bottles of white essence and a bottle of burn ointment. He said calmly, while applying it to Alexis, "They must be sent to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Magical Maladies immediately. Burns of this degree must be treated by professional doctors. My potion can only barely guarantee that they will not die on the way." He pursed his lips and looked at Alexis with complicated eyes. A week later, St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies. Alexis looked at Sirius Black, parking his things with envy, her eyes almost glued to him. "Valley. Alexis, it's useless for you to look at me like this. Sirius Black spread his hands with an innocent look on his face. I was just burned, and you know. I'm finally leaving here. I'm going to the Pig's Head bar to drink all day. Alexis curled her lips and reluctantly turned her gaze elsewhere. That day, the Pillar of Fire swallowed him and Voldemort, and then completely lost control. Soon, the windbreaker that accompanied him all over the world was burned to ashes, and the thing he hit in the pocket of the windbreaker was exposed and swallowed by the flames. Just when he was about to be burned to a crisp by the flames, Sirius Black transformed into his animagus form, rushed towards him, dug a hole under the yew tree, and crushed him under him. Then he was discovered by Snape, and with the help of everyone's crude healing spells and Snape's white essence, he and Sirius Black were sent to St. Mungo's Hospital for magical injuries and injuries. But he had actually stopped breathing once on the road. That was what death felt like. Alexis had died, and he knew what death felt like. Thanks to doctors at St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies, he was brought back to life. The news that they had annihilated the Death Eaters and killed Voldemort again spread rapidly in just 1 week, causing an uproar throughout Europe. The name Alexis Felix suddenly became a household name. Before that he was only known as the adopted son of Grindelwald or Dumbledore, and this was the first time he was known for his own sake. Newspapers were praising his reputation, people were advocating for his bravery, and he became the darling of the entire European wizarding community after James and Harry. Alexis Felix, the new savior. While they were advocating for Alexis, they obviously had no idea that their savior's wand hand was now shaking enough to sift chaff. In addition to killing Voldemort, the news that Barty Jr. killed Cornelius Fudge also spread quickly. At first, people learned through Umbridge that, after seeing old Barty that night, they thought it was the minister who was killed by old Barty Point, but soon Batty Sr.'s body was found at home. While people were talking about who killed him, more and more evidence about the existence of Batty Jr. was found in old Batty's home. They soon learned that Barty Sr. and his wife had visited Barty Jr. in Azkaban. People speculated that they had Barty Sr.'s wife take Polyjuice Potion and transform into Barty Jr.'s appearance. Little Barty takes Polyjuice Potion and transforms into his mother. In this way, Ledateo was stunned and got little Barty out of prison and secretly hid him at home. Later, Voldemort secretly contacted Barty Jr., who first killed the upright Barty Sr., then came to the Ministry of Magic, disguised as Senior. Barty killed the kind minister Cornelius Fudge, released the Dark Mark, and declared that the return of the Demon King. Rufus is now the acting Minister of Magic in the Ministry of Magic. The specific candidate will be discussed after everything is settled. But everyone knows that Rufus becoming Minister of Magic is already a certainty. In addition, the Death Eaters captured that day were also imprisoned in the Ministry of Magic, but recently the Ministry of Magic was almost overcrowded. It's not that there are too many staff, but that there are too many prisoners. Azkaban was burned to the ground, the Dementors dispersed, and without Azkaban, the prisoners had no place to be detained for the time being, so they had to be locked up in the Ministry of Magic. In the past week alone, prisoners who were temporarily detained occupied most of the Aura department, which forced many Auras to work together in groups. In addition, incidents of Dementors attacking humans began to spread from various places, as well as Voldemort's die-hard Death Eaters causing rebellion. All this has made Rufus bald, the old lion who is about to take office as Minister of Magic, and his little hair is about to fall out. And most importantly, the Time Turner is still missing. Although they captured a large number of Death Eaters, foiled Voldemort's plot, and even killed Voldemort, their original goal was not achieved, and a large number of Time Turners were not recovered. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163, The Little Fat Man in St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries. The crime against you. Alexis grabbed an apple and gnawed on it, while Sirius Black had already finished packing. That's what you said. Sirius Black chuckled. Rufus is acting for the Ministry of Magic now. I will go find him when he is finished. With Rufus's consent, coupled with Dumbledore's relationship and Sirius Black's own role in the fight against Voldemort, his stigma will be easily cleared, and his case against the Wizengamot will also be overturned. At least that's what Alexis and Sirius Black thought. "Brother, it's time for me to go." Sirius Black stood up and hugged Alexis, bidding him farewell. In fact, he should have left long ago, but Alexis kept holding him back, which is why he has been dragging him until now. Sirius Black's burns looked horrifying. In fact, they were in danger and almost died. But in the final analysis, they were just simple burns that could be easily treated in the hands of someone who was proficient in healing magic. But Alexis's situation of taking medicine indiscriminately is the most difficult. On the third day, after entering the hospital, Sirius Black was able to leave, but Alexis had just woken up at that time. Sirius Black was worried about him, and chose to stay. Then on the fourth day, Alexis, who was able to move around, begged him to stay with her. "The key to Hogsmeade has been burned. Ask Aberforth and he will take you there. He also has a spare key there," Alexis warned naggingly. "You stay there first, and when I get out, I'll look for you." He just sent Aberforth, Dumbledore and others away yesterday, not only because they all had things to do, but also because Aberforth and Dumbledore always quarreled. Aberforth almost rushed into Hogwarts and shoved Dumbledore into the chimney after learning that Alexis had almost died. He yelled at Dumbledore angrily and sadly, "You are the murderer. What caused all this is all because of you. Murderer. Murderer." He even stopped Dumbledore from entering Alexis' hospital room to visit her. Dumbledore could only stand at the door and look through the crack in the window. Poor Dumbledore. And Christie was also driven away by Alexis. That woman gave Alexis a strange feeling, and he felt awkward in her presence. Sirius Black was gone, leaving Alexis alone in the ward. St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies has a total of 6 floors, and is divided into 5 departments. The first floor is the Artifact Accident Department, which mainly treats accidents caused by artifacts, including crucible explosions, wand misfires, broom collisions, etc. The second floor is the Biological Injury Department, which is responsible for treating stings, burns, punctures, etc. The third floor is the Department of Strange Bacterial Infections, which is responsible for treating infectious diseases such as dragonpox, disappearing syndrome, and lymphoid mycositis. The fourth floor is the Department of Pharmacy and Phototoxicity, responsible for treating skin rashes, nausea, incessant laughter, etc. Point the spell that cannot be removed, the wrong spell used, etc. The fifth floor is the Curse Injury Department, which is responsible for treating poisonous curses, evil curses, wrong curses, etc. that cannot be removed. The sixth floor is a tea room and shop, where visitors can rest or buy gifts for patients. Alexis and Sirius Black were initially in the Object Accident Department on the first floor, but were later moved to the fourth floor for treatment. But the pile of weird potions he took was really unique. The therapist here couldn't cure him well, which can be seen from his still shaking arms, so he was sent to the curse on the 5th floor, Injury Department for treatment. On this floor there is also a special ward, the Janus Sicky ward, which is for those permanent patients. For example, the Longbottoms live here. The healer brought a potion to Alexis. The spell was no longer able to cure her, so they had no choice but to use the potion. Alexis sniffed the dark green liquid, grinned at the therapist, and drank it in one gulp. He is also a master of potions, so he can naturally tell the quality of potions. In fact, he has diagnosed his own situation. In his opinion, all he needs is time. The trembling symptoms will naturally disappear after a while. Good. This bottle of medicine is used to treat epilepsy. It probably won't have much effect on his symptoms, but it's better than nothing, so it doesn't hurt to give it a try. The therapist left the room after asking Alexis how she was feeling. Alexis tossed and turned in bed, beginning to feel bored. He has read all of today's newspapers, even the recruitment advertisement on the last page of the Daily Prophet. Blake, Alexis was mid-sentence when she remembered that Sirius had already left in the morning. He closed his mouth, pursed his lips tightly, and turned over. He quietly opened the door and peered into the corridor. Seeing that no one was paying attention, he quietly left the ward and walked towards Janus 6 ward. He was going to see the Longbottoms. Janus 6 ward was not difficult to find. He had been here before and was quickly found by Alexis. Mr. and Mrs. Longbottom were still lying together, drooling and dozing off. Alexis stood at the door and watched for a while, then silently returned to his ward. He remembered that the first year Gryffindor seemed to have a child named Neville Longbottom, who should be the child of Mr. and Mrs. Longbottom. Maybe after leaving here, he should go find Neville Longbottom. I heard that he lives with his grandma. With this thought in mind, Alexis rolled onto the bed and prepared to take a nap. Sorry, sir. As soon as he lay down, the door was suddenly opened. A little fat man came halfway and apologized nervously to him. The little fat man's face was red and he was about to cry. It doesn't matter. Who are you looking for? Alexis asked, sitting up again. Well, I'm looking for my parents. I'm looking for the Longbottoms. The little fat man lowered his head and whispered, looking for the Longbottoms? Are you Neville Longbottom? The little fat man pinched the corner of his clothes, nodded nervously, and refused to speak. I know where they are, and I can take you there. Alexis got out of bed again and led Neville towards the Longbottoms ward. Standing at the door of the ward, the little fat man barely reached the window with his toes. Looking inside through the window, the little fat man looked a little confused, and his mood was very low. If you're not in a hurry, maybe you can come to my hospital room and we can talk. Alexis asked. I'm Alexis, a teacher at Hogwarts. I recognize you, sir. Neville whispered. There are pictures of you in the newspapers these days, and I've seen you in school. That's good. Alexis smiled. Let's talk. Your parents and I used to know each other. The little fat man raised his head, his slightly red eyes emitting a faint light, and he looked forward to it. Your parents are very brave people. Chapter 164. I can't stand it. Arriving on the 6th floor, Alexis led Neville to a dessert shop. This dessert shop was newly opened this year. Once it opened, it received unanimous praise from all the therapists at St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and maladies. Many injured patients would occasionally come to his home to buy some desserts. This shop is called Felix Dessert Shop. Alexis learned that his sweet shop was especially popular among children. After saying hello to the store manager, Alexis took one look at Neville's chubby figure and withdrew his hand towards the cream cake. What do you want to eat? Neville swallowed. Neville lived with his grandmother, who often scolded him for not being qualified to be his parents' child. This constant setback turned him into a shy, introverted person with low self-esteem. In fact, Neville has a very high talent in magic. As a baby, he could use magic to control the blanket and wrap himself tighter. Unfortunately, no one realized this. No matter his family or the midwife, they just thought that Neville's father helped to wrap it tightly. A child who shows magic as a baby, think about it, how amazing his talent will be. The last person to show talent as an infant was Alexis herself. Alexis saw Neville's shyness. He hesitated, took a tray, picked up a few of the shop's signature desserts, carried the tray outside, and chose a table to sit down at. Try it and see. Maybe you can help with some suggestions for improvement. Alexis pushed the tray towards Neville. Neville looked at Alexis, then at the tempting aroma of desserts on the tray, and finally nodded. He carefully stretched out his hand, with gentle and silent movements, and picked up the piece of black and white panda closest to him. He carefully took a small bite of the dessert and glanced up, nervously paying attention to Alexis's expression. Like a little mouse stealing cat food. Did you come alone? Alexis' hands were still shaking, and he pressed both palms under his legs and asked gently. Neville nodded. School starts tomorrow. I miss my parents. I sneaked over here to have a look. Mr. Alexis, can you not tell Grandma? Neville begged. Grandma said I was not worthy of being my parents' child. Of course. Neville, boy, you deserve it. Although I was not present when you were born, I know your parents and we have fought side by side. After you were born, your father, Frank, danced with joy and introduced people to others. When he saw him, Alexis coughed, imitating Frank Longbottom's voice. Hey man, good news for you. My baby was born. I have a son. I named him Neville. Oh my god, it's such a shame you didn't get to see him. He's so cute. He is my baby. Neville stared at Alexis, his eyes sparkling. Did he really say that, sir? Of course. Of course he said that. I can vouch for that, because I've heard it hundreds of times. He even captured a Death Eater and took him to Azkaban without forgetting to show off to him. When Neville heard this, his eyes widened at first, as if in disbelief, and then a smile appeared on his face. His chubby face trembled, and his eyes were squeezed into gaps. Let me tell you another secret. Alexis leaned close to Neville and whispered, at that time, we were going to be tortured crazy by Frank. We even planned to gag him. But for your sake we abandoned the plan. Neville's eyes widened and he chuckled. In fact, Alexis didn't quite understand what was so funny about this, but this incident was laughed at by other members who worked together for a long time. Until the Longbottoms accident, they often made fun of them about it. That's why Alexis used this to coax Neville. He was somewhat friends with the Longbottoms, though not to the same extent as Lupin or Black were with him. Dumbledore also taught him, or perhaps it was more appropriate to say he warned him, when he stuffed the letter of appointment into his arms. You have to be patient with the kids, Alex. The dessert was delightful, and Alexis' words overturned what Grandma had always told Neville. You're not good enough for your parents. Although the long-term negative influence has not been completely resolved, Alexis can still feel some changes in Neville, and he has become a little bit cheerful. Alexis felt novel about the changes he had brought to Neville, and had a strange sense of satisfaction. This sense of satisfaction was different from developing a certain potion, or deciphering a certain animal or plant, but it still made him feel happy. But the pleasure quickly disappeared. The boring life in the hospital bored him so much that he felt like he was growing hairy. After reading today's newspaper for the third time, Alexis became a little annoyed and turned the newspaper into birds and let them fly around the ward. Alexis. This behavior quickly attracted the attention of the therapist. The fat therapist pushed open the door to the ward angrily and yelled at Alexis, "Don't use magic." "My lord, Merlin, if you continue like this, your condition will get worse." "But I'm going to be bored to death," Alexis Winston argued innocently. The therapist sighed, picked up the newspaper that had fallen on the ground, and returned to its original appearance, put it back on the bedside, and persuaded him earnestly. "Your situation is very complicated, Alexis. You are also a potion master yourself. You should know that, if you take so many potions with complex ingredients in one go, if you were not lucky, you would have died there. You have to be patient, Alexis." Alexis nodded impatiently and dismissed the therapist. "Patience, patience, my patience, oh my god." Alexis muttered, his arms moved, and then his eyes lit up. Just now, he discovered that his arm, that had been shaking violently, had changed. Although it was still shaking, the amplitude had weakened. "Maybe it's time for me to get out of here." Alexis groped her chin and thought, maybe I should prepare some potions myself. He wasn't sure if he could cure himself if he continued to stay like this, but he would go crazy. Of that he was sure. Alexis rolled out of bed and was about to put things into his pockets when he realized that his windbreaker had been ruined. Pouting her lips in displeasure, Alexis tiptoed to the door of the ward, pushed open a gap, and after confirming that there was no one in the corridor, carefully left the ward and walked against the wall toward the end of the corridor. The next day, after the Daily Prophet finished reporting on major events in the magical world as usual, it opened up a large space on the second page. Shocked, Alexis Felix, the savior, was treated like this at St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies. The subtitle is, From Mr. Alexis's Escape from St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Magical Injuries to the Inside Story of the Hospital. Chapter 165, Gringotts in Diagon Alley. Alexis didn't know that his escape had caused a lot of trouble to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries. After he ran out of St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries, he breathed in the fresh air and felt much more awake. When he was hesitating about where to go next, he remembered the homing pigeon he had received not long ago. In this world, there is probably only one person who still uses a classical method of carrier pigeons to transmit messages, right? It was the phrase "he is my pride" that made him make the subsequent decision. Counting the dates, the Christmas holidays were over, and the Christmas dinner he promised Grindelwald had long since passed. A gust of cold wind blew, and Alexis couldn't help but shiver. He ran out of the hospital wearing only a thin set of clothes. No matter what, let's put on our clothes first, Alexis muttered, trying to get her bearings a little and find the path to Diagon Alley. He first went to Gringotts to get the money. Poor Alexis, all the galleons he had brought with him were destroyed in the fire. To his surprise, the person who entertained him was the same goblin from last time. After sitting on the cart and going all the way down, Alexis once again passed the dragon that was tied here. Alexis stared at the dragon with wide eyes, still shaking at the same time. He was too cold. Don't have any ideas about dragons, Griffith screamed, the car speeding up even faster. That's Gringotts' property. Alexis, shut your greedy eyes. The sound of pulling the ring was torn apart by the speeding cart and scattered in the air. Alexis looked away and curled her lips. Griffith, can you open Lestrange's vault? Griffith turned his head, his big ears swaying in the wind, and he looked at Alexis more warily, but out of professionalism. He didn't yell at Alexis this time. Lestrange has a total of 20 local vaults. Although Griffith didn't yell at him, his tone was not good either. This was because Alexis stored and spent a lot of galleons in Gringotts every year. Otherwise he wouldn't even receive such treatment. There will be. Alexis looked at Griffith with wide eyes and an "are you kidding me" look on her face. Lestrange is a very famous surname in the British and even European wizarding circles. This is a pure-blood family. This family has produced a minister of magic. It was in the last century, and the situation is different from today. At that time, to become the minister of magic, just having the ability was not enough. In addition, the most talked about thing about this family is not the intermarriage within their family. Most pure-blood families do this. There is nothing new about it. The most well-known thing about them is Lestrange. Family unity. A crow will not peck another crow's eye. The symbol of the Lestrange family is a raven. Every direct member of the Lestrange family opens a separate vault in Gringotts. Alexis had read a book called The Pure Blood Guide, which was actually forced upon him by Grindelwald. He thought about it and remembered that the Pure Blood Guide recorded exactly 20 direct members of the Lestrange family. But Alexis thought this was a little too outrageous. In fact, most families, even pure blood families, when storing items in Gringotts, will choose to open a family vault, just like the Potter family vault that Alexis showed Harry at the beginning of school. It was not only James's vault, it was also used by generations of ancestors of the Potter family. Even if a certain family member has a little secret, he will usually hide it in the deep mountains and old forests, and will not choose the vault of Gringotts. You must know that opening a vault in Gringotts costs money to maintain. As for the Lestrange family's behavior of opening as many vaults as there are direct members, Alexis could only think of one word: trench. Is this the confidence of a pure blood family? Valley. Then do you know which one is the most special? Alexis continued to ask. Griffith looked at Alexis with more vigilance. The aura of being the great hero who killed Voldemort didn't seem to work well here. In fact, the goblins don't have much feelings for Voldemort. So what will happen if Voldemort takes power? Return to primitive society, stop using galleons, and switch to bartering. As long as there is a deal, the goblins can continue to open Gringotts. Mr. Alexis, your vault has arrived, Griffith said dryly. Alexis pouted, jumped out of the car, and turned around again when he didn't hear any movement behind him. Why don't you come down? Griffith leaned back and shook his head with a dry smile. Just kidding. This was the man who defeated Voldemort head on. His little arms and legs couldn't defeat him. Thinking of this man's reputation and the questions he asked on the road, Griffith was so nervous that his palms were all sweaty. Alexis opened his treasury and took out a cloth bag blessed by the Traceless extension spell. After putting a lot of galleons in it, he dug out a wooden box from the corner of the treasury. This wooden box has a simple and elegant shape, with dark golden lines drawn on the brown surface. These lines are twisted and intertwined with each other, converging into a gold galleon-sized circle in the center. Alexis pressed her thumb into the circle and recited a spell. Light flashed across the dark golden lines, and the wooden box opened in response. Inside the wooden box, layers of pallets slowly floated in the air. The space inside this wooden box is much larger than it appears from the outside. Alexis ran her fingers back and forth across the tray. redwood, rosewood, silver forge wood, snakewood. Alexis selected a few wands and put them into a cloth bag, closed the wooden box again, and stuffed it under a large pile of galleons. Okay, let's go. Griffock nodded and didn't say much. Griffock, besides direct members of the Lestrange family, is there anyone else's vault? Alexis asked. Griffock's whole body trembled, as if he had been burned. Mr. Alexis, he screamed, you are a distinguished guest of Gringotts, and now you are a distinguished hero of the wizarding world. Please do something that matches your status. As Griffock spoke, he held his head high, looking righteous and awe-inspiring. This is a matter of professional ethics, Mr. Alexis. Even if you pointed your great wand at me, I would not say it. Alexis didn't know what Griffock was thinking, but he definitely had a lot of inexplicable things in his mind. Alexis rolled his eyes and didn't plan to continue asking Griffock. This is simply a showman. Just looking at the dragon is considered to be abducting it. Just asking about the Lestrange family is considered to be robbery. Well, he did have that idea. Helga Hufflepuff's cup is in Lestrange's vault. After Griffock's introduction, Alexis was a little unsure of which vault it was in. There are more than 20 people. You can't go through them one by one, right? Chapter 166. Return to Nurmengard. After leaving Gringotts, Alexis went straight to Madame Malkin's robe shop. He could feel that the emotion hidden in Madame Malkin's eyes when she looked at him was different from before. This made Alexis a little awkward. After changing his clothes, he hurriedly left the robe shop, not even mentioning the custom-made windbreaker he had thought about before. After wandering around for a while, I put the purchased things into a cloth bag, because this was just an ordinary cloth bag, and its capacity was not as large as Alexis's windbreaker pocket. That pocket was carefully made by Alexis, and was only because of that pocket the price of that trench coat increased hundreds of times. At this time, the bag was full. Alexis stood at the door of the broomstick store, looking through the window for a long time, and finally sighed and picked out a Nimbus 2000. This is the latest Quidditch broomstick launch this year. The conceptual firebolt model he bought for Harry has disappeared. I heard it was recalled. It is said that there are some flaws in the design. They even came close to it in Bulgaria. The child fell and killed someone, for which they paid a large amount of compensation. Wearing a hood to cover his face, Alexis had discovered that something extraordinary seemed to have happened to him, which made people around him start pointing fingers at him. This is the second thing. The most important thing is that every time he goes to buy something, the shopkeeper always talks a lot and even asks for a photo. This greatly slows down his purchasing speed. Time is wasted on boring conversations. A Nimbus 2000, Alexis said, took out the galleons and handed it over. Without waiting for the shop owner to speak, he grabbed the broom and left the shop. Stuffing the broom into the bag, Alexis did not set off immediately. He returned to Gringotts and came to a very deserted department. In exchange for 10 galleons in pounds sterling, the dozing goblin shook his body and was suddenly awakened. He wiped his eyes and looked at the mysterious man hiding in the robe in disbelief with an expression on his face that said, "Did I hear that right? Are you sure, sir?" The goblin asked, but his hands were very deft. He took away the 10 gold galleons handed over by Alexis with a hand speed that even Alexis was stunned. "Hurry up," Alexis urged. The currency of the Muggle world is interoperable with the currency of the Wizarding world, but in order to prevent a certain wizard from collecting currency exchanges in the Muggle world, the exchange of pounds and galleons has always been easy to enter and strict to exit point except for young wizards in the Muggle world. It is almost impossible for others to exchange pounds for galleons. Of course, no wizard has the time to convert galleons into pounds. This resulted in his service window being very deserted, with few customers being seen throughout the year. It was even rarer for someone like Alexis to exchange 10 galleons at once. According to the current exchange ratio, 1 galloon can be exchanged for £5. The goblin quickly counted out £50 and handed it to Alexis. "See you next time," the goblin shouted at Alexis as departing back. After leaving Diagon Alley with £50, Alexis found a phone booth and dialed Huang Weijin's number. "Alexis?" Huang Weijin's voice was filled with confusion, then joy. "Great, thank God you're okay. I've heard it all. You defeated the man named Voldemort. Only then did Alexis know that the news had already spread to Asia. After chatting for a while, Alexis revealed his purpose. Huang, make me a windbreaker, the same as the previous one. You can find the dimensions. No problem. The two chatted for a while, and after reaching an agreement, they hung up the phone. Stepping out of the phone booth, Alexis patted his cheek, took out a wand, held it in his hand and tried it, his arm still shaking. This will cause his gestures to deviate when casting spells, which can easily cause danger. Non-standard gestures will not only invalidate the spell, but in some more dangerous spells, deformed movements may have very dire consequences. Damn it. Alexis held his wrist with his other hand, trying to stabilize his right hand and complete the spell, but as a result, both his hands began to tremble. Now Alexis can only rely on wandless magic. Other than that, he has no fighting ability at all. Alexis put away her wand and prepared to try the wandless spell. Phantom Shift. Halfway through the spell, Alexis felt something bad and immediately gave up. The slight tearing feeling coming from inside the body slowly disappeared. He sighed, knocked on his forehead, and walked onto a bus with his head hanging down. Arriving at the outskirts, when no one was around, Alexis took out Nimbus 2000, determined the direction, and soared into the sky. At 10 o'clock in the evening, the news that Alexis was missing came from St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries. At this time, Alexis was still flying in the sky. Since getting that special gift in the Far East, Alexis hasn't used a broomstick for a long time. This has made his journey very slow, and he even almost hit the cliff several times. When the Daily Prophet published a series of strange reports, telling the story of Alexis being dissatisfied with the poor facilities of St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries, and criticizing the outdated and rotten system of St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries. By the way, Alexis came to Nurmengard only when the bitter complained that our hero, the great Mr. Alexis Felix, did not deserve such treatment spread throughout Britain. After more than 20 hours of flying, Alexis felt like she was going numb and her whole body was shaking even more. He couldn't wait to land on the island, and staggered towards the stone castle in the center. Old man. Grindelwald. I'm back. Alexis' brisk shouts were carried by the cold wind to the island, carrying a cheerful atmosphere. Arriving at the door of the stone castle, Grindelwald, dressed in grey cloth, just came downstairs. Quick, let me in. I'm going to be exhausted. This crap is useless at all. My thighs are all worn out. Alexis didn't notice Grindelwald's strange look, squeezed Grindelwald away, ran upstairs, and then fell on the bed. I bought a lot of ingredients, so we can make up for the Christmas dinner tonight. Alexis lay on the bed unwilling to move. He took out the cloth bag and began to pour it out. Soon, the miscellaneous things were piled up into a hill beside the bed. Not now. I don't want to move a finger. I have to rest. Alexis threw away the bag, kicked off her shoes, spread out Grindelwald's neatly folded quilt, and got into bed. Only then did he notice that, while he was talking grumblingly, Grindelwald had been standing at the door, holding the wand in his hand, looking at him quietly without saying a word. Chapter 167. Grindelwald studying the brief history of time. What happened? Alexis asked strangely. Come to your senses, old man. He shook his body with trembling palms. His eyes wandered around the empty room, and finally landed on Grindelwald's hand holding the wand. He sat up. Anyone here? Grindelwald shook his head, put his wand back in his pocket, moved a stool and sat down. Alexis picked up a book on the bedside, A Brief History of Time. Alexis? This is a book that Alexis bought when he was traveling a few years ago. I heard that it was written by a very famous physicist in the Muggle world. It tells about Muggles' understanding of the nature of the universe, and is highly regarded. Alexis bought a copy and read it while spending Christmas in Nurmengard. What is Grindelwald doing looking at this? Alexis put down A Brief History of Time, and there was a pile of books below, all about time. Some of them were written by wizards, and some were from the Muggle world. What are you looking at this for? Alexis looked up at Grindelwald with worry in her eyes. He was worried that Grindelwald was starting to work on the Deathly Hallows again. He had made an agreement with Grindelwald that neither of them could study the Deathly Hallows or death. but should follow nature. Grindelwald came to his senses, and a kind smile appeared on his face again. It's nothing. As Grindelwald said this, he took the books back from Alexis' hands, sorted them neatly, and stuffed them into a cabinet with 4 legs of different lengths. After stuffing them behind the books, the crookedness of the cabinet was clearly evident. Alexis stared at the gap between the book and the inner wall of the cabinet for a moment, then reached out to hold the cabinet, before it tipped over. Let's nail another cabinet. This one is so ugly. Grindelwald paused slightly, silently withdrew his hand, and said with a smile, "The little guy has grown disdainful of what I have here so quickly." Alexis shook her head. He knew that Grindelwald was making fun of him. There was silence in the room for a moment before Grindelwald's voice sounded again. "How are things going?" He probably knew a few things about Alexis, such as that he was injured, that he almost lost his life, and that he killed Voldemort. But he didn't know the details. These were all what Dumbledore told him. After learning that Alexis was sent to St. Mungo's hospital for magical maladies and maladies, Dumbledore couldn't sit still. He went to visit Alexis at St. Mungo's hospital for magical maladies and maladies, but unfortunately he was stopped by Aberforth. Outside, not allowed in. Later, he had to deal with many things. No matter how incompetent Fudge was, he was also the Minister of Magic. The murder of the minister was a big deal, and caused quite a stir in the world, especially after the murder of the Minister of Magic. He also arrogantly left the dark mark on the Ministry of Magic. This is simply a provocation to the Wizengamot. Dumbledore was busy dealing with these matters until Fudge was buried, and Rufus took over as acting minister, and then he had some time. It was also at that time that Dumbledore remembered that Grindelwald did not know about this. In order to prevent Grindelwald from running out of Nurmengard in excitement after learning that Alexis was injured, he came to Nurmengard himself. Gad briefly told Grindelwald what happened. "What I heard from Dumbledore was naturally not detailed enough." Dumbledore would weigh the pros and cons and consciously delete the content. Alexis sat up from the bed and began to explain his decision to take Harry to Azkaban, how he asked Snape to teach Harry the Patronus charm, how they met in Azkaban, and later included the encounter with the Dementor, the battle with monsters, the battle with Death Eaters, and the battle with Voldemort are explained one by one. He focused on the process of his advanced planning, how he contacted the members of the Order of the Phoenix and Rufisaurus, and how he speculated that the Death Eaters would attack from the other side of the coast, so that the members of the Order of the Phoenix and the Auras could ambush them in advance. He didn't mention a word about the meeting with his other self, or what he saw in the mirror of their eyes the night before. There was also the time turner given to him by Grindelwald, but he didn't mention it either. Quite tacitly, Grindelwald did not ask. After the other Alexis arrived, Grindelwald had already inferred from his words that the two Alexis might have met, but he still did not ask. After Alexis finished speaking, Grindelwald's eyes paused on his arm for a moment. His arms were still shaking. This will greatly affect the speed and precision of his spellcasting. "Those medicines you made," Grindelwald frowned slightly, "can they still be cured?" Alexis looked down at her shaking arms and laughed. He raised his arms, not caring. "Don't worry, this is just a sequelae of overdevelopment of motor nerves. My body will adjust itself. It just might take some time. So I am back." Grindelwald smiled with satisfaction. Whether they are humans or animals, or other fairies, giants, etc., when they are injured or feel threatened, their first choice is always to go home. Even though this home has only 4 walls, it can still give people an inexplicable sense of security. "You are now a great hero in the wizarding world of Europe," Grindelwald joked. He was not wrong in saying that. Alexis defeated Voldemort head-on, and dozens of people were present as witnesses. This directly broke Voldemort's image of being invincible, and made people slightly less afraid of Voldemort. What he did was more inspiring than his sudden and inexplicable death in Godric's Hollow 11 years ago. After all, not many people know what exactly happened in Godric's Hollow 11 years ago, and it is precisely because of this that people regard Harry Potter, a baby just a few months old, as their savior. But in fact, people don't know how a newborn baby, who can't even hold a wand, can be Voldemort's opponent. It was probably the Potters who killed Voldemort. It's just that the Potters are dead, and the news that Voldemort will come back has been spreading. People are in urgent need of a savior who can let them sleep peacefully. In this way, Harry became the savior. Now, Alexis is the one who defeated Voldemort head on, and he is still alive. People can praise Alexis as much as they want. Anyway, even if Voldemort comes back again, there will still be Alexis. Most people think that, if Alexis can defeat Voldemort once, he can defeat Voldemort a second time, a third time, a fourth time. They no longer have to live under the shadow of fear brought by Voldemort. They no longer have to not mention, not report, and not record Voldemort. They can mention Voldemort repeatedly as much as they want, and everything about him from childhood to adulthood. Take everything out, and study it over and over again. Correspondingly, there is a hot new savior, Alexis. Chapter 168, starting from St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries. Alexis stayed in Nurmengard to recuperate, where he could feel safe, even though he still couldn't use magic spells as before, and the only one who accompanied him was Grindelwald, who didn't know if he would be able to reappear. The Dark Lord who had the style of his time. He discovered that Grindelwald began to like reading books. Grindelwald read very quickly, and the brief history of time was finished on the third day after he returned. Are you still watching this? Alexis drank slowly from a bowl of chicken soup, and pointed at the nature magazine in Grindelwald's hand. In his hand, on the newly built small table, there are a lot of academic papers with tongue-twisting titles. What's even more outrageous is that these are all things from the Muggle world. Alexis tilted his head and looked at Grindelwald curiously. He now had every reason to suspect that Grindelwald was possessed. Just looking around, Grindelwald put down the magazine and said, I find it interesting how Muggles study some things. Alexis pulled up a stool and sat down, ready to listen to Grindelwald's views. In the past 11 years, he has been wandering around the Muggle world. Although he has not systematically studied the scientific knowledge of the Muggle world, his attainments in this area are not shallow. At least he can understand the contents of magazines and papers of. Compared with why Grindelwald is interested in these, he is more curious about, can Grindelwald understand it? Alexis glanced at the paper on the table. From time to time, strange words popped up in it. The sentences were long and smelly. There was not a single punctuation mark in 3 or 4 lines. This made Alexis very suspicious of the paper. Does the author want to choke the reader to death in one breath? For example, their research on this special relativity. Alexis was confused as soon as Grindelwald opened his mouth, but then he suddenly realized he was talking about special theory of relativity. There is also the principle that the speed of light does not change. According to them, you can't go back to the past. At this point, Grindelwald sighed and said with regret, I should really show them the time turner. Alexis. Grindelwald looked at Alexis. I found that, because Muggles don't know magic, they study the phenomena around them more thoroughly. Maybe the conclusions they drew at the time were not correct, but they are more advanced than most wizards. Their pursuit of truth has left wizards far behind. Wizards are just relying on the advantage of magic, and they can barely stay ahead of Muggles, but the wizards don't seem to know it yet. They are still lying here, complacent. Someone like Grindelwald has always had a good view of the big picture, and he can easily see the gap between Muggles and wizards, the gap in the search for truth, just through one academic journal and a few prospective papers. However, even Grindelwald's estimation of the gap between Muggles and wizards is still insufficient. As far as Alexis knows, compared with the Muggle world, the wizarding world is simply backward in all aspects. From social systems to common sense of life, from education to people's livelihood, from finance to force, the Muggle world has surpassed the wizarding world in all aspects. Achieve crushing momentum. Grindelwald has always been a diehard supporter of the Muggle threat theory, or it can be said that the Muggle threat theory was proposed by Grindelwald. He needs to be more alert in this regard. It can be said that, except for Alexis, in the entire wizarding world, Grindelwald ranks first in terms of alertness to the Muggle world in the wizarding world. But even such a person still lacks understanding of the real gap. This cast a pall over Alexis's laid-back mood. But the shadow of the rapid development of the Muggle world did not delay Alexis for long. Soon, another thing attracted all his attention. January 26th early morning. Alexis has been staying in Nurmengard for half a month. A freshly minted newspaper was delivered to him. Savior, Hero vs Dark Lord. Similar past. Open the Daily Prophet and the headline on the front page reads the title in bold and larger font. The subtitle is written in a slightly smaller font below. Exclusively revealed, the sympathy between the new savior and the evil Dark Lord. You just feel sorry for having no-nos, and your whole family feels sorry for having no-nos. Alexis felt that her good mood early in the morning was ruined by the title of this article. He opened the newspaper with some annoyance and hurriedly scanned 2 lines. This issue of the newspaper is very interesting. It does not describe it directly in an article, but first gives 2 tables. On one side of the form was a picture of Voldemort, and on the other side was a picture of Alexis. Life experience: orphan, abandoned by his mother at the gate of the orphanage, raised in an orphanage/origin unknown, picked up and adopted by the Dark Lord Grindelwald. Childhood: being bullied. His childhood life was not happy. It could even be said to be very miserable / although the author doesn't know much about Mr. Alexis's childhood, we can imagine living on an island like Nurmengard, living next to the Dark Lord. His childhood may not have been a good one. Studying Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Slytherin House / although Mr. Alexis graduated from Hufflepuff, a house known as a concentration of waste, the author heard that he was sorted into Slytherin. Lynn later transferred to Hufflepuff House through some kind of relationship. Perhaps the only advantage of Hufflepuff House is that none of the students who came out of here were accorded as posing a threat to society. There are a lot of scattered things listed below, including height, hobbies, assets and other messy things. Then, finally we get to the main text. From the table above, we can see that Alexis, Felix and Voldemort have a lot of similarities. To be honest, I was very shocked when I came to this conclusion. Are you shocked? Like Voldemort, I have 2 arms, 2 hands, 1 nose and 2 eyes. Why didn't you say that Voldemort and I were brothers? Alexis rolled her eyes. She felt that the Daily Prophet was getting better and better at making things up. It was just the first picture, and the rest was all made up. If you have this ability, what else can you do as a writer? Just publish a novel. With such an imagination, you will definitely become the next Lockhart. Alexis directly balled up the first edition of the Daily Prophet into a ball, raised his hand, and threw it out. The newspaper ball drew an arc in the air and fell into the garbage basket. Satisfied, he lowered his head and started reading the second page. The content of the second edition is still related to him. Things are getting worse. What is St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies hiding? Subtitle: What on earth caused our hero and savior Mr. Alexis Felix to leave in anger? Who is responsible for this? Are these a bunch of crazy dogs? Alexis cursed secretly, as early as a few days ago, when I saw in the newspapers that the matter of him leaving St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies without saying goodbye was intensifying. I had already issued a statement to explain my feelings towards St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies. There was no dissatisfaction, it was just that he needed to rest, and he didn't think he needed to stay in the hospital any longer. The newspaper published his reputation verbatim, but it didn't seem to be of any use. The daily newspapers are still occupied by St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries, and the newspapers are still denouncing. What on earth did you do to make Mr. Alexis, the savior, so dissatisfied that he walked away? St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Magical Injuries has been unable to cure Mr. Alexis, the savior, for so long. Is this the incompetence of St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Magical Injuries? The therapist at St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries had a bad attitude and was incompetent. He actually prevented Mr. Alexis, the savior, from treating himself. Eventually, Mr. Alexis, the savior, left angrily. Chapter 169. I smell a conspiracy. As if overpass St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries, a long-standing hospital for injuries and illnesses founded by Healer Mungo Bonham in the early 17th century, became a target of public criticism. Countless victims of St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries emerged under questioning from multiple media outlets, including the Daily Prophet. In every newspaper that denounced St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies, they tearfully complained about their experiences here. They accuse St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies' various bad behaviors conclusively. The treatment techniques are poor, the therapists have bad attitudes and indifferent expressions, the environment is dirty, the medicines are watered down, the charges are high and arbitrary, the patients' families are asked for bribes, and even the treatment is refused. Someone even claimed with certainty that one of his relatives was dragged into a secret experiment by St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies. The victim claimed that his relative just suffered from dragonpox. After being sent to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies, only a week later he was informed that the patient had died. The public was in an uproar and the public was furious. In a very short period of time, St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries became the target of public criticism, with everyone calling for beatings. In today's Daily Prophet supplement, a large and detailed report was made on the news of great news. The Ministry of Magic has intervened in the investigation. St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries was closed yesterday, and the opening date is unknown. Alexis found this scene ridiculous. Then he felt a strong sense of familiarity. This scene is so similar to the media smear campaign against Dumbledore a few months ago. But this time, his leaving without saying goodbye became the trigger. Everyone in SU was using his words and his name to denounce St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries. As for what Alexis, the person involved, thought, it didn't matter anymore. Morning. Alexis put down the newspaper, said hello to Grindelwald, and the two began running around Nurmengard. After returning from running, Alexis made breakfast and brought it to the table, and the two of them ate slowly. Grindelwald maintained the traditional habit of reading newspapers at the dinner table, so he also saw reports on St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies in the Daily Prophet and other newspapers. He put down the newspaper and sneered. Alex, you need to pay attention. Grindelwald put the omelette into his mouth, chewed it carefully, then raised his head and said, someone is starting to take advantage of your reputation. Alexis nodded. I smell conspiracy. What are you going to do? Grindelwald asked. Alexis put the last mouthful of pumpkin porridge into his mouth, put down the tabloid, and wiped his mouth. I want to wait a little longer. If this continues, the people behind it will jump out sooner or later. If we come forward now, we won't know who is behind it. Grindelwald nodded in agreement. You're good to know. How's your injury? Alexis grinned, raised her arms, and waved a few times. Almost cured. There is a letter from Albus urging you to come back. Grindelwald said suddenly. You have fallen behind a lot in your Hogwarts courses, and your application to be incorporated into the exam this year is probably not going to pass. Alexis deliberately looked sad. Are you chasing me away, old man? I've only been at home for half a month, and you're already impatient. Old man, you have changed. Fuck off. Grindelwald was amused by Alexis, and he laughed and cursed. Go. He had already expected it a few days ago. Alexis came back to recuperate from his injuries, and now that his injuries are healed, he is almost leaving. Especially since the situation outside is so chaotic now. If Alexis does not come forward to deal with it, and continues to stay in Nurmengard, I'm afraid that things will develop to unimaginable levels. At that point, it will be too late to deal with it. He did agree that Alexis would not come forward to stop public opinion for the time being. This did not mean that nothing would be done. If he did not come forward for the time being, there was indeed hope to fish out the mastermind behind the scenes. But if he really did nothing, just watch the situation develop and wait. When the mastermind reveals himself, things are going to be very difficult. After breakfast, in the morning, a package was thrown in front of Alexis. Open the package, and reveal the black windbreaker inside. Alexis put on her windbreaker, fumbled in the pockets of her arms, and nodded with satisfaction. Huang's craftsmanship is beyond words. Even if he didn't see the real person, with the size data left a few years ago, the clothes he made still fit him. Especially his specially requested pockets. Alexis stuffed the wand, money and some other random things in the small cloth bag into his pocket, patted the outside of the pocket with satisfaction, picked up a letter and opened it. The letter was written by Huang Weijun, and came with the windbreaker package. Huang Weijun didn't say much in the letter. He just asked about his physical condition with concern and invited him to play when he had time. At the end of the letter, Huang Weijun mentioned you and your adoptive father. Please pay more attention. Recently, I heard some not so good things from a friend. Alexis rolled her eyes and pocketed the letter. Comrade Huang Weijun, half of what you say, be careful when giving birth to a child. After staying for a few more days, the time has come to January. Dumbledore's letters have arrived. Alexis knew that the day for him to leave Nurmengard had come. Got to go? When Alexis came upstairs, Grindelwald was studying his muggle physics. After hearing footsteps, Grindelwald raised his head and asked, "Yes?" Alexis nodded, not hiding Dumbledore's letter. Grindelwald frowned. "Be careful," he ordered. "I won't stop you from researching those bottles and jars of stuff you have, but you have to pay attention. At least the stuff you use on yourself must be verified repeatedly. Don't make it like this. If it weren't for that little guy from the Black family, you would be really in danger this time." After a slight pause, Grindelwald added, "Next time you come back, you can bring the little guy from the Black family over." Alexis knew what Grindelwald meant. It was Sirius Black who saved him, and Grindelwald wanted to express his gratitude in person. But thinking of Sirius Black's attitude towards the Dark Lord, Alexis could only smile bitterly in return. He was afraid that after he brought Sirius Black to Nurmengard, the two of them would tear Nurmengard apart. Grindelwald was indeed very grateful to Sirius for saving one of his own, but it was impossible for Grindelwald to allow Sirius Black to make a mistake in front of him. There were only two people in the world who dared to lose his temper with Grindelwald, yell or even take action. Obviously, Sirius Black was not one of them. "Okay, if you want to go, go quickly." Seeing the reluctance in Alexis's eyes, Grindelwald smiled and said, "I'm not going to die of old age." Alexis stepped forward and gave Grindelwald a hug, just like he did when parting last time, and couldn't help but tell him, "Remember to take the newly prepared medicine on time. And those chickens, don't mind the trouble. You'll kill them as soon as I leave, raise them, and eat an egg every morning. Pay attention to rest, and don't read under the oil lamp. It's not good for your eyes. The cell phone I left for you," Alexis gestured. "Use it to contact me much faster than using your carrier pigeons upstairs. I can also hear your voice directly. And also, if you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170, Return to London. February, Street. Outside London. Alexis followed his memory and came here, and the sight in front of him made him unbelievable. He stood at the door and wiped his eyes hard, and then confirmed that he was not dazzled, but that the old man named Claire really made this place like this. Last time, Alexis walked through the grass that was as tall as a person to get to the door. When he was about to knock on the door, he was almost hit by Claire's spell. At that time, this place was simply a haunted house in the wilderness, and old man Claire was the lonely ghost wandering the world. Look in front of you. I don't know what stimulated Claire. They haven't seen each other for a few months, and the haunted house in the wilderness has turned into a castle. The grass as tall as a person has long disappeared. Turning here from the main road, there is the winding blue grey stone road is lined with neatly trimmed bushes. Alexis smelled magic in the bushes. This place has been under a muggle expulsion spell. Muggles will subconsciously stay away from this place to ensure that this castle is not discovered by muggles. Alexis followed the stone road to the end. The rough black iron railing gate was tightly closed. Through the railings, one could see inside. A straight road connected the gate to the castle. On both sides of the road stood strange stone statues. "Claire!" Alexis shouted tentatively. The castle door opened, and a energetic old man limped out. The old man stood at the door for a while. After seeing Alexis outside the door clearly, a bright smile immediately appeared on his wrinkled face like walnut skin. "Oh, it's His Highness Alexis." The old man shouted happily, trotted open the iron gate, stepped back half a step, and stood on the side of the road with his bow. "Just call me Alexis," Alexis said with some surprise. He stared at the old man carefully, and then he vaguely recognized a familiar look from the old man's red face. "Claire," he called again tentatively. "It's me, Alexis, your highness." Claire was wearing a black robe, as clean as new, with a bright smile on his face again. It seemed that he was extremely happy to be recognized by Alexis. "You are?" Alexis pointed to the castle in front of her, and looked at Claire suspiciously. "Since you sent Lord Grindelwald's letter, I privately summoned several other followers of Lord Grindelwald. After learning that you were working at Hogwarts, we discussed and decided to temporarily use this place as a base for your convenience. You can find us whenever you need us." Claire introduced Alexis proudly as she led them towards the castle. "You should have informed us of your actions a month ago." At the end, Claire complained with a hint of resentment. Alexis looked at Claire and said nothing. Unexpectedly, his look made Claire very hurt. "Although we are old, we are still staunch supporters of Lord Grindelwald. No matter how old we are, our abilities have never deteriorated." Alexis nodded without arguing with Claire. He came here mainly for a visit. Considering Claire's miserable appearance when they last met, Alexis suspected that, if he didn't come, no one would know about Claire's death in the house and the stinky body. Who would have thought that not only are they living well, but they are even ready to continue to devote themselves to Grindelwald's great cause, and continue to shine. "Since there is nothing else, I'll go first," Alexis said. He originally wanted to give the letters written by Grindelwald to several people Claire found, but those letters had been burned in the cemetery. "You should be careful. We have received news that the wizarding world will not be peaceful recently. I'm afraid there is some conspiracy brewing." Claire followed Alexis and talked nonsense. "But this might be our chance." He looked at Alexis expectantly. "I don't know. Does Lord Grindelwald have any orders?" Alexis looked at Claire, who was eager to try, and had a headache. "What orders could Grindelwald have? Asking you to buy academic journals for him? Or is he asking you to help him with his physics research?" The old man is probably sitting by the stove now, drinking hot tea, fascinated by the vast world of physics. "What kind of uprising are the coal miners waging against you?" Seeing that Alexis didn't speak for a long time, Claire's expectant eyes gradually dimmed. "Has Lord Grindelwald forgotten us?" he muttered to himself, then shook his head. "No, it won't. Lord Grindelwald must have other plans." Consoling herself like this, Claire regained hope. "Didn't you say there are others? Why do you only see yourself?" Alexis asked. "They went out to contact other people," Claire said excitedly. "I stayed here in case you couldn't find anyone." Look, Claire spread her hands, looking a little proud. If he didn't stay, Alexis would be in vain this time, and it might be a long time before he heard anything about Grindelwald again, although he didn't hear much about Grindelwald this time either. "You said something big was going to happen." The two of them had arrived at the door. Alexis stood still and asked with a frown. Claire looked even more proud when she mentioned this. "Yes," he said. "Since you defeated the guy who dared to pretend to be Lord Grindelwald, we have all been encouraged. When gathering people, we got unexpected news." Having said this, Claire paused for a moment and lowered her voice mysteriously. "It is said that some muggles witnessed the mark above the Ministry of Magic that night." Alexis nodded thoughtfully. Claire said this, and Huan Weijin said the same. How come these unrelated people got the news, but he, the person at the center of the whirlpool, didn't hear anything at all? Do you know the specific situation? Claire shook her head. "It's not clear yet, but if you need it, we will continue to collect information." Having said this, Claire's eyes became bright again, and he seemed to become excited. "Don't worry, we are professionals. The little guys today are too rough in doing things, which is far different from what we did back then. You give us 2 weeks. After 2 weeks we promise to get to the bottom of the story." Alexis nodded. If these old guys are idle, who knows what trouble they will cause, so why not find something for them to do? After sending Alexis away, Claire closed the door contentedly, hummed a tune from her hometown with her hands behind her back, and slowly walked back to the castle. "Old guys, we have work to do again." He was talking to himself. After a while, several owls flew out of the castle, scattered and disappeared into the horizon. Chapter 171. Goodbye Rufus. Saying goodbye to Claire, Alexis went straight to the Ministry of Magic. He came out of Nurmengard and did not go straight to Hogwarts. Instead, he came to London. The main purpose was to meet Rufus and understand where the situation had developed. Besides, he and Rufus are old acquaintances. Now Rufus is acting for the British Ministry of Magic. He is about to become a full-time official and become the Minister of Magic. This is a promotion. After that, he will seek advancement in the international community. As a matter of course, it was time for Alexis to come and see Rufus. Alexis walked into the Ministry of Magic. It was still daytime and the Ministry of Magic building was full of people. Alexis immediately attracted people's attention when he appeared. As soon as he entered the door, he was surrounded by everyone who came after hearing the news. Defeating Voldemort head-on and nipping the conspiracy of the Dark Lord and his Death Eaters in the cradle. This title is enough to make him a celebrity. Coupled with a month of continuous media coverage, Alexis is almost considered a legend. People rushed forward, wanting to get closer to the legend. Alexis had never seen this battle before, and he was so frightened that he retreated continuously. But people didn't give him a chance at all. Soon, even his retreat was blocked by the crowd. When Alexis finally got rid of the enthusiastic crowd and arrived at the minister's office, he heard a familiar roar coming from inside before he even entered. I disagree. The Ministry of Magic is not a prison. These damn Death Eaters must be moved away as soon as possible. Oh my god. Do the people in the Wizengamot have slugs in their heads? They should really come here and take a look. The Ministry of Magic is almost becoming a gathering place for Death Eaters. Alexis pushed open the door and walked in just in time to see Rufus sitting there, angrily yelling at the pink cutie. Seeing Alexis entering the door, Rufus's eyes widened, and coupled with his flushed face, he looked like an angry bull. Rufus waved the pink cutie away and sighed heavily. Alexis closed the door smoothly, smiled, opened her arms, and gave Rufus a hug. Dear old friend. The two separated, and Rufus stood up and brought Alexis a cup of black tea and asked with a smile, "Why are you here?" Rufus has always been serious, and his appearance is a bit serious and old-fashioned, which makes his smile a bit stiff and looks like a fake smile. "Let me see you." Alexis took a sip of black tea. "I heard that you are going to officially become the Minister of Magic. Congratulations." The smile on Rufus' face faltered, and after a moment of silence, he said again, "Thank you." He seemed to want to say something, and the pink cutie pushed open the door again, holding some documents, and handing them to Rufus. Rufus gave Alexis an apologetic look, and lowered his head to flip through the documents. Umbridge looked at Alexis, her eyes so bright, that Alexis trembled all over. "Shit." Rufus cursed under his breath, signed, handed the document to Umbridge, and sighed heavily after Umbridge left. "Alexis, my dear old friend, if it were possible, I really wish we could switch." He couldn't help complaining. "I really should let you see it. I bet you won't believe that there are such stupid people in this world. The Wizengamot has been unwilling to open a court to try the Death Eaters. Those Death Eaters can only be temporarily detained in the Ministry of Magic. Now the Aura Command has almost become a Death Eater club. And even if they are tried, their whereabouts are still a problem. Azkaban has been destroyed, and we have no new prisons to hold prisoners at all. All the prisoners captured by the Aura Command during this period will stay here. If this continues, the Ministry of Magic is almost turning into a prison. And those congressmen, I really want to use legilimency on them to see what they are thinking, and why they refuse to approve the reconstruction of the prison valley. There are also those Dementors. They are everywhere in Europe. The Ministry of Magic in France and Germany sends letters of protest every day, asking us to solve the problem as soon as possible. Oh my god. Why don't they deal with it? We didn't release the Dementors. And also, Rufus seemed to have finally found an outlet, complaining endlessly to Alexis, complaining that the Wizengamot councillors had their brains full of slugs, and that the people in the International Federation of Wizards had their brains eaten away by the Winged Demon. This kind of Rufus is completely different from Alexis's impression of him. This made Alexis feel a little awkward. He was not good at comforting people. It was enough for him to quarrel with others. At this time, he could only listen to Rufus's complaints honestly and remain silent. Rufus complained endlessly for more than an hour, as if he had vented all the depression and grievance he had been feeling recently. This made him feel relaxed and energetic. Alexis, my dear old friend, what are your plans for the future? Rufus took a sip of tea, looked at Alexis and asked. Perhaps you should come and help me, he said. How about the head of Aura Command? Alexis shook his head, and Rufus asked further, or why don't you just become the minister? I'm just fed up with their stupidity. I really don't understand how Mr. Fudge manages to live in harmony with them. I just want to pry open their heads and give each of them the Imperious Curse. That won't work, Rufus. I have to go back to Hogwarts. You know, I'm a professor at Hogwarts now. Alexis. Rufus leaned forward with a smile on his face, but his eyes were staring at Alexis seriously. You are the one who defeated the mysterious man. You are the hero of the entire magical world. Maybe you still don't understand what this means. But I hope you can know that, if you want to, no one will object, not even me, and I will be happy to help you. Alexis smiled and shook her head, rejecting Rufus' offer. Are you kidding me, being the Minister of Magic? Listening to what Rufus just complained about, Rufus just wanted to use the Imperious Curse on them. If it were him, he would have already used the Imperious Curse by now. Rufus sat back and shrugged regretfully. Okay, I knew you were like this. Alexis couldn't help but take another look at Rufus. He always felt that Rufus was a little weird. Maybe it's too much pressure? Alexis didn't think much. He instead said, I heard some rumors. It seemed like something was going to happen. Rufus had no reaction to this. He filled himself another cup of tea, nodded and said, yes, the Dementors are running around, and the Death Eaters are also taking the opportunity to cause trouble. With so many prisoners, they can only suppress the Aura headquarters. There is something wrong with St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies. It has happened, Alexis. Maybe you really should come and help me, don't you? Alexis shook her head and refused again. Rufus breathed a sigh of relief and didn't mention it again. The two talked for a while, and although the content and the parties involved were no different from before, the atmosphere in the office always made Alexis feel awkward. After the Pink Umbridge interrupted their conversation by delivering documents for the 8th time, Alexis stood up and left. I came to London this time mainly to congratulate you, Rufus. I'm going back to Hogwarts. If I don't go back, it's time for Dumbledore to come over and take me back. Haha. How could it be possible? You are the one who defeated the mysterious man. Rufus stood up and hugged Alexis goodbye. Goodbye, my dear old friend. Goodbye. Chapter 172, Lucius warning. Alexis did not return to Hogwarts. He took a plane and rushed directly to Wiltshire, England, where Malfoy Manor, a historic manor, was located. In the distant year 1066, the Battle of Hastings broke out. The unknown Armand Malfoy came to England as a wizard with William the Conqueror's army to start their conquest. Later, William became king and gave the wizard Armand Malfoy the best land in Wiltshire to thank Armand Malfoy for his contribution in his conquest of England. Armand Malfoy built Malfoy Manor on this land, and since then, the Malfoy family has taken root in Wiltshire. After nearly 10 centuries and thousands of years of accumulation, the Malfoy family has continued to annex surrounding Muggle lands and expand its influence. Today, the Malfoy family has become a very important presence in the entire United Kingdom. Perhaps when it comes to popularity, Dumbledore can be known to everyone, but when it comes to real influence, the Malfoy family is the top existence in both the Wizarding and Muggle worlds. Although the Malfoy family continues to support the blood theory and agrees with the concept of the supremacy of pure blood, in fact, the Malfoy family is involved in many Muggle industries. Alexis knew the history of the Malfoy family well, but he didn't quite know what kind of behemoth the Malfoy family was today. If he hadn't made an unbreakable vow with Lucius Malfoy through threats and inducements in order to save Lupin, he might not have been able to control Lucius, based on the influence of the Malfoy family. Now, let's make an unbreakable oath. Whoever breaks it will go to the god of death. All living beings are equal before the god of death, no matter whether you are the adopted son of the Black and White Demon King, or the patriarch of a pure blood family. Because of the existence of the unbreakable vow and the fact that Alexis had only killed Voldemort less than 2 months ago, he was politely invited into the manor. At this point in time, Draco Malfoy was attending Hogwarts, Narcissa had gone somewhere, and Lucius was the only one in the huge manor. This makes it easier for them to discuss some private topics. The two were well aware of their relationship and did not exchange polite greetings. Lucius originally wanted to maintain a superficial relationship, but Alexis refused to accept this, so he had no choice but to give up. Something's going on lately, Alexis. As soon as he sat down, Lucius said solemnly, "How come everyone knows but I don't? What the hell is going to happen?" Alexis cursed secretly, but did not show it on her face. "I know, I heard it too." Lucius was a little surprised, but then he thought of Alexis' background, that even he was jealous of, and nodded in acquiescence. "Are you behind Rufus' appointment as Minister of Magic?" Alexis asked. The Malfoy family has been involved in almost every change of the Minister of Magic, but sometimes the people they funded did not succeed in being elected. The previous Ostrich Minister Fudge was a minister funded by the Malfoy family, otherwise Fudge would not have immediately agreed to frame Dumbledore when Lucius approached him. Unfortunately, Alexis appeared in the middle. After weighing the pros and cons, and realizing that he could gain more benefits by cooperating with Alexis, Lucius decisively gave up on Fudge. From the current point of view, Lucius's choice was correct. At least Alexis is still alive, and Fudge is dead. Lucius shook his head no. The Malfoy family wouldn't do that. Compared to the weak and controllable Ostrich Minister Fudge, Rufus is a percent hardliner. If you want to control Rufus, unless you use the Imperious Curse on him. Moreover, judging from what Rufus did when he became the head of the Aura Command, he was a very decent and upright person. In Lucius's opinion, this kind of person was not worth winning over. It's not that he doesn't like Rufus, but it's useless to win him over. Even if he sponsors Rufus to become a minister, so what? Judging from past behavior, Rufus still will not favor the Malfoy family. Moreover, Lucius has formed an alliance with Alexis, and in their oath, the Malfoy family will fully support Alexis. When Rufus became acting minister for magic, Alexis lay unconscious in a bed at St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries. But there should be someone else behind him. Alexis mentioned Rufus, and Lucius followed his words. From the time Cornelius Fudge was found assassinated to the time Rufus was elected acting minister, the whole process didn't even take half a day. I suspect this was something Rufus had already prepared for. Lucius looked at Alexis as he spoke. According to normal procedures, if the current minister has an accident and is unable to continue to perform his duties as Minister of Magic, the Ministry of Magic will convene the heads of each department to conduct an election and elect an agent, minister. Then start the election of ministers in advance. But Rufus took over so quickly. I just heard that the election meeting had started and the results were already there. Alexis, given our alliance, I need to remind you that you need to be careful about Rufus. It seems he is not what he seems. Alexis wanted to retort, but in the end no word came out. What he said when he met Rufus today, coupled with the abnormalities mentioned by Lucius, gave Alexis a strange feeling. In view of Lucius's bad past, he was always skeptical of Lucius's words, but it had to be said that once the seeds of doubt were planted, no matter what the other party did, he would find it weird. For example, the Aura who let go of the werewolf Fenrir happened precisely because the time turner was stolen. For example, he was in charge of the entire action and layout process, not Rufus. For example, during their brief meeting on the coast after the destruction of Azkaban, Rufus offered to return to the ministry. Logically speaking, as the head of the Aura Command, he should go to the cemetery with them to round up the Death Eaters. For example, Umbridge next to Rufus. Alexis clearly remembers that Rufus seemed to have nothing to do with Umbridge. Why did Umbridge, a close confidant of the former minister, still show up after he was promoted to minister, being kept by his side, such as so many that Alexis was lost in thought. Alexis? Lucius's voice called Alexis back from his thoughts. He suppressed the doubts in his heart and asked what's going on with St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies? Lucius controls the entire Malfoy family, like a behemoth hiding in the shadows, its tentacles and claws extending everywhere in the wizarding and muggle worlds. Of course, the Malfoy family also has its presence in the media world. Chapter 173, Lucius' sense of smell. Someone is going to deal with you. Lucius frowned and said softly, Street Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries has treated countless patients since its establishment. Almost every family in the wizarding world in Europe has a history of members being treated by St. Mungo's, including our Malfoy family. We are extremely grateful to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries. We will do whatever we can to help St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Magical Injuries regardless of gain or loss. But St. Mungo's has been closed down for investigation. Alexis expressed doubts about what Lucius said. Is this the result of your helping regardless of gains and losses? Let someone close their business and accept a transfer. I did it. Lucius said frankly, if you continue to allow the media to make trouble, things will get out of control. Alexis, don't forget that it was you who started this in the first place. You are now the great hero who defeated him. Your prestige is at the top. Everyone will be kind to you and respect you. Even if you occasionally do something wrong, people will treat you with the greatest kindness. There is inclusion in what you do. They will even cover up your mistakes and selectively ignore them. Instead, they will look for other people's mistakes and blame your mistakes on others. But these are not unlimited. When you exhaust people's goodwill and respect, the mistakes you have made in the past will come back to bite you. Your past will be rummaged through and studied inch by people with a magnifying glass. People will not let go of any mistakes as small as a millimeter. They will seize them and attack you. How popular you are now, you will be hated one day. Alexis, you have to understand that everything you get has been secretly marked with a price. The more you ask for, the more you will be charged. When you can't afford it, they will take everything away from you. Alexis glanced at Lucius, who had transformed into a philosophy tutor. Not to mention that he was wearing loose casual home clothes. His hair was neatly combed, and his face was still handsome, even though he was old. This guy really looked like a gentle animal. Why are you so familiar with these? Lucius was silent for a while and said slowly, because the Malfoy family has been doing this for 10 centuries. Not only the Malfoy family, but all pureblood families do this, but the Malfoy family is the most measured. Alexis nodded noncommittally. He's a little confused now. I thought I could slowly train Harry, slowly cut off Voldemort's wings, turn him into a polished commander, and finally deal with him, but suddenly it was fast forwarded to the final decisive battle. I thought it was just an ordinary sit and wait, using my knowledge of the Death Eaters to set up an ambush, but I didn't expect to be ambushed by the Death Eaters. He thought that after Voldemort was killed, the rest would be to slowly clean up the Death Eaters. From then on, he would be able to do whatever he wanted. Unexpectedly, after Voldemort died, things became more complicated. Why can't everyone just stop for a while and study the lovely plants and animals? Why do we have to make trouble? Alexis couldn't understand their thoughts. He just felt bored. Alexis. Lucius looked at Alexis, whose face was uncertain, and said in a deep voice, you must take action. Whether it's St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies, or Rufus, you have to take action. During the conversation, Lucius had directly listed Rufus as his enemy. Maybe you don't like to argue, or you don't even understand these things, but we made an oath before. If not for the oath, Alexis, you must fight for yourself. You killed him in a head-on confrontation. Your reputation has reached its peak. You are a bright target. All ambitious people will regard you as an enemy. No matter what they want to do, they must take you down first. Do you think so too? Alexis turned her gaze and looked at Lucius with a confused expression. Go. Lucius nodded without hesitation. We are allies. According to our oath, I will help you with all my strength, so I will be honest with you. If it were me, St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries would be just the beginning, with the focus being on Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Lucius showed full sincerity, did not shy away from Alexis's gaze, and directly analyzed compared to St. Mungo's Hogwarts gathers children from all over the UK. You once threatened me with Draco. Similar to my situation, there are thousands of wizard and muggle families. Maybe they will fight rationally for power and wealth, but if something threatens their children, they will completely lose their minds. If I were your opponent, I would start directly from Hogwarts. such as the bunch of unknown drugs you took, and the equipment from the Muggle world. In terms of attitude, Lucius Malfoy has no objection to things in the Muggle world. The power of the Malfoy family in the Muggle world cannot be underestimated. The knowledgeable Lucius has already transcended the distinction between Muggles and wizards. Whether it was a Muggle invention or a wizard's alchemy, as long as it was useful and beneficial to himself and the Malfoy family, he would accept it. Therefore, when Alexis mentioned those Muggle instruments, his expression remained normal. Cause 1 or 2 accidents, or even more, in which students are killed or injured, Alexis, and you will face the hostility of every wizard in the entire UK. In conjunction, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, your adoptive father Dumbledore, and everyone related to you will face the hostility of the entire British wizarding community. No matter who you defeat, once you reach that point, it will have no effect at all. Alexis imagined following Lucius's words. He couldn't understand it, but put himself into it, and imagined Grindelwald's reaction when he faced the threat of death. Alexis couldn't help but shudder. So, it is no longer a question of whether you want it or not, but you have to fight. No matter who your opponent is, you have to fight. Fight for what? Lucius looked out the window. Outside the window was a wide lawn. Because it was already winter, there was not much green on the grass. His voice also became a little distant. Power, status. Beat everyone, kill everyone in your way, and get to the top. Like Dumbledore? Lucius shook his head. Not enough. Since Dumbledore became chief, he has been facing provocations from others all the time. Otherwise he would have become the president of the International Federation of Wizards. Note he can't even be Minister for Magic in the UK. Alexis was thoughtful. Under Lucius' complicated eyes, he raised his head and suddenly asked, "How about you?" Lucius was stunned for a moment, not understanding what he was asking. "Is this lobbying?" Alexis ignored Lucius's confusion and said to himself, "Who told you to say that to me?" Or, Alexis thought of a possibility, and he felt a little weird. Chapter 174, Saint Mungo and -039, S. Alexis has 3 elders in total. Among them, Grindelwald's attitude is to let things go. If you cause trouble, I will take care of you. Aberforth's attitude is that it is good for you to live, and it will be better if you can make a difference. Alright. Among these 3 people, there was only Dumbledore. Dumbledore had expected a lot from him since he was a child. Although he never quite understood what Dumbledore expected, Alexis could feel it through those wise eyes. He is expecting himself. This is also the reason why Alexis always goes against Dumbledore and refuses to accept Dumbledore's discipline. But haven't Lucius and Dumbledore had a long-standing feud? Alexis left Malfoy Manor, full of doubts. He seemed to understand a lot of things, but he still seemed to understand nothing. But no matter what, Lucius' words made him suddenly feel that the responsibility on his shoulders became very heavy. He still represented Alexis Felix, but he was not just Alexis Felix. No matter what he thought, the Black Hand hiding in the dark didn't care. He killed him, along with everyone around him. Alexis couldn't tolerate this. He has never been afraid of challenges. When faced with potential threats, he prefers to identify them and then crush them ruthlessly. After leaving Malfoy Manor, Alexis' next stop was St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Injuries. St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies is disguised as an old red brick department store with a shabby sign outside that reads Teo Teo Limited. The once bustling St. Mungo's is particularly quiet today. It has been ordered to be temporarily closed, which makes this old red brick building look particularly old-fashioned and desolate. The reception table at the door had been moved to an unknown location, and the fat blonde witch who sat here every day and pointed patients to the corresponding floors was also missing. The whole building was extremely quiet. Alexis climbed up the stairs until he reached the gymnastic ward of the magic injury department on the 5th floor, and finally heard the sound of people moving. A kind witch with a gold and silver garland on her head just walked out of the ward. She always had a kind smile on her face. She turned around and closed the door. Then she leaned against the ward door and let out a long sigh. The kind smile on his face also disappeared. "Excuse me," Alexis's voice alarmed the kind witch. She looked sideways and quickly wiped her face with the back of her hand, as if she wanted to wipe away the tears on her face and regain her warm smile. You are Alexis. She recognized Alexis, but she acted differently than Alexis expected. Ah, the witch exclaimed, and then quickly adjusted her emotions. Can I help you? Sorry, St. Mungo's is temporarily closed. If you are here to see a doctor, you may. If you are here to visit a patient, I can help. As Alexis approached, he shook hands with the witch and glanced at her chest. Medium Straw. Janus Sitch ward therapist. Janus Sicky ward manager. Ms. Medium Straw. Alexis said apologetically, where are the other therapists? Miriam Straw sighed, because the matter in the newspaper was so serious that the Ministry of Magic had to intervene in the investigation. We were ordered to close down. The other therapists could only go home and wait for the news. Because I'm in charge here, and the patients here must be taken care of, so I stayed. As she said this, she couldn't help but glance at Alexis. Although everyone, at least half of the people understand this truth. Alexis is being used, and someone is using his reputation to cause trouble. But the matter is indeed from Alexis. It started here. If he didn't leave without saying goodbye, how could the media seize the opportunity to pour dirty water on St. Mungo's? Even someone like Medium Straw couldn't help but feel a little resentful towards Alexis. They are therapists, working conscientiously every day, treating patients, and watching the patients recover. They feel so happy to leave here, but now, instead of being grateful to them, those people are cursing them overwhelmingly. This made Medium Straw very aggrieved. Alexis did not miss the flash of resentment in Medium Straw's eyes. This further verified what Lucius had said. Can you give me a list of the patients here? Alexis asked. I have sent a statement to several media outlets including the Daily Prophet, explaining that I have been well taken care of at St. Mungo's and that there is nothing like what was speculated in the newspapers. I believe things will get better soon. He wouldn't believe it no matter what. In Malfoy manner, he analyzed with Lucius that this wave of using St. Mungo's to attack his reputation seemed easy to crack. It seemed to be a test by the other party, not a real offensive. But there's no telling what other backup plan the other party has waiting for him. In any case, he must make a statement immediately. He and Lucius have made an appointment. When his statement is published in the newspaper, Lucius will immediately use his connections to lift the blockade of St. Mungo's and restore St. Mungo's. He asked for the patient list, just to screen it to see if there were any other problems. Medium Straw looked a little hesitant. Sorry. She finally gritted her teeth and shook her head. I'm afraid I can't let you take them away. It doesn't matter. If possible, I can watch it here. I won't take it away. Medium breathed a sigh of relief. She asked Alexis to wait at the door, returned to the ward, and soon handed Alexis a notebook. Alexis opened the notebook, which contained detailed records of the patients living in Janus 6 ward, including their symptoms, their origins, and their daily performance. After roughly browsing, Alexis returned the notebook to the witch, expressed her apology again, and turned to leave. There was nothing wrong with what was recorded in the notebook, which made Alexis slightly relieved. What he and Lucius were most worried about was that there would be problems with the patients here, and it would be very difficult for him to do anything at that time. Once a patient has a problem, it will confirm the slander against St. Mungo's in the newspaper, and if he supports St. Mungo's, this matter will become a stain. If he does not support it, he will offend the entire St. Mungo's, and the entire network of relationships it touches. After listening to Lucius's analysis, although Alexis was not afraid of them, he would not do such a thing that actively caused trouble for himself. The next day, Alexis' statement was published in major newspapers, once again arousing widespread discussion. Chapter 175, Return to Hogwarts. By this time Alexis had returned to Hogwarts. After a welcome ceremony that Alexis was not used to, the news of Alexis' return to Hogwarts spread quickly, as if it had wings. Within Hogwarts, Alexis' return was received with great enthusiasm, especially by all the teachers and students of Hufflepuff House. Among the 4 major houses of Hogwarts, Slytherin is famous for their ambition, Ravenclaw is famous for its wisdom, Gryffindor is popular for its bravery and loyalty. What about Hufflepuff? Hufflepuff is like a crowd standing aside, sitting in the audience silently watching the other houses sing, and I come on stage. Although they are the largest in number, although they are hardworking, kind and brave, Compared with other houses, they have never produced any famous figures. The last person who was famous all over the world and made them proud was the famous Hogwarts dropout and outstanding magical animal breeder, Mr. Newt. Now, they can finally hold their heads high and proudly announce to the world, we Hufflepuffs also have influential figures, living. This is a man who defeated Voldemort head-on. Just from them Hufflepuffs. At the end of December, when the news first came out, the little badgers all stared wide-eyed, feeling like they were in a dream. They did not start celebrating immediately, nor did they show off to other students. They were afraid that this was a fake, that it would be confirmed in the end that the person who defeated Voldemort was actually someone from Gryffindor or Ravenclaw, or maybe even someone from Gryffindor or Ravenclaw. Slytherin point. Even at that time, the news that Alexis defeated Voldemort head-on had already been published. But as the Christmas vacation ended and Harry returned to school, a restless mood began to brew among the little badgers. After enduring a lesson, the little badgers finally couldn't bear it and sent a representative to Harry. Lee asked. They had all seen it in the newspapers and Harry was there. Then, the exciting 5 minutes of waiting time passed by in a flash, and happiness fell from the sky. It was really Alexis who defeated Voldemort. The little badgers were so excited that they even couldn't help but let out a small cheer. But the news that followed was like a drop of cold water. Alexis was seriously injured and fell into a coma. The little badgers secretly prayed that Alexis was okay. Maybe God heard their prayers, and today, Alexis finally returned safely. After welcoming Alexis back, the little badgers seemed to be carrying the wind as they walked, full of joy. Alexis was not as happy as the little badgers. He just returned to Hogwarts and felt that there were a lot of things to do. He needs to reformulate his teaching plan and make up for the missed courses. The inclusion of pharmacy in the examination scope has been put on hold temporarily due to recent events, but the problem should not be big. This year is enough, and next year it is basically a certainty. He had to see Dumbledore. From the beginning to the end of the whole incident, Dumbledore almost didn't show up. Instead, it was only after he was unconscious that Dumbledore came forward to clean up the matter. This is absolutely abnormal. He also needs to find Sirius Black. Don't forget, Sirius Black is still an Azkaban prisoner on the run. The Aurors did not catch him during the operation, all because of Rufus and Yad on the face of Lexis. In addition, there are Horcruxes. It is true that Voldemort was killed by him, but there are still Death Eaters on the run outside. Even if all the Death Eaters are captured, there is no guarantee that any guy with a convulsive brain will do it. Resurrection of Voldemort. Sirius Black has been responsible for finding out the whereabouts of Horcruxes and collecting them. He has to ask about the progress. Also, he had to see the Mirror of Erased. Azkaban was reduced to ashes in blazing flames. This was the vision he had seen in the Mirror of Erased the night before his departure, and it actually happened. This kind of thing has never happened before. If the Mirror of Erased could not only reflect people's inner desires, but also the future, then the war, death, and ruins he had seen before. Alexis didn't even dare to think about it anymore. He also needs to pay attention to the external situation and the development of the situation. According to the plan specified by him and Lucius, it is not appropriate for him to show up for the time being. Thank God, there was finally something he didn't need to do for the time being. In addition to these big things, there are also various small things. He had to go and report to Aberforth that he was safe, otherwise he would never be able to drink Aberforth's special mead again. He had to find time to talk to Harry, who the trio had been staring at him in class for a whole lesson. And Draco Malfoy. Lucius had just shown his sincerity to him, and he had to show his sincerity as well. And Lupin, Snape, Professor McGonagall, Professor Flitwick. Alexis wished she could invent a magic spell that would make people clone themselves. After making an appointment with Harry to meet him in the office after dinner, Alexis left Hogwarts after class and went straight to Hogsmeade. Although Hogsmeade has a famous name, it is actually not that big, and the house Alexis bought is easy to find. He first went to the Hogshead bar and met Aberforth. Aberforth laughed and gave him a bear hug, almost slapping him into pieces. He put his arm around Alexis's shoulders and introduced the guests to the bar with a proud look on his face. Big guy. Aberforth's loud voice immediately silenced the bar. This is Alexis. He was the one who defeated Voldemort. Kill Voldemort again. Frontal. The bar immediately burst into cheers from the guests. People whistled and applauded Alexis, and the atmosphere was immediately pushed to a climax. Today's drinks are all half price. Seemingly sensing Alexis' shyness, Aberforth announced loudly, celebrating our Alexis' return from injury. The atmosphere is at its peak. Aberforth walked into the small room at the back with Alexis in his arms, closed the door, and could still vaguely hear the noise in the bar. Are all injuries healed? Aberforth narrowed his eyes and asked, sitting next to Alexis. His face was red and his words were somewhat slurred. He looked like he had drank a lot and was in a tipsy state. Alexis nodded. Good boy. Aberforth looked at Alexis with squinted eyes and slapped Alexis on the back, causing Alexis to grin. He bet his back was red. I came here to ask, did Blake come to get the keys from you? Aberforth shook his head, twitching the shaggy beard under his chin, looking like Santa Claus. Of course, that bad boy has moved into your home. It appears Black is safe for now. Most of their daily activities were within the Hogwarts campus. With Voldemort unable to be resurrected in a short period of time, it was almost completely safe. Only Sirius Black was wandering outside alone. This was why Alexis let him live in Hogsmeade. But he's not in the village. Aberforth said with a loud tongue. Not here? This surprised Alexis. Sirius was not staying in Hogsmeade. Why was he running out? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.